Hello there, my name is SaSeshen. Welcome to the stream. We are going to be talking about a myriad of different things. It seems the news is just unrelenting with what it wants to give us today. We have everything from Israeli strikes to Putin threatening nuclear war to the Fauci testimonies where conservatives are losing their mind that Fauci had the audacity to suggest that we wear masks and distance from one another. There are, of course, other trending topics in the news, but we got 3 hours, so we're going to do our best to get through all of them today. Depending on how the stream ebbs and flows, we might even find some time to throw in some gaming while continuing discussions. But for now, we're going to get right into the nitty-gritty. Oh, and there it is, right there in the top right-hand corner. Oh, I forgot to mention Bannon's prison fate. So he was convicted 2 years ago. But he appealed it, and the appeals court said, nope, that's not going to happen. And so the original judge is now going to follow through on that conviction. Bannon, I guess, could elevate the appeal even further, but that's what we'll get into. So without further ado, I believe we can get into the video. There it is. Dozens killed in Israeli attack on Gaza school where refugee families were sheltering. 40 have been killed. Now, I have obviously been a very vocal proponent against Israel from the very beginning. It seems like almost every single stream we will end up talking about Palestine because almost every single day that we will be streaming, Israel commits some sort of atrocity or act of genocide against Palestine. I had hoped to do a more educational stream focusing on the history of the war rather than going off of what is actually happening in the war. I had truly hoped that Israel could at least stop committing war crimes for at least one day, but it does not seem to be the case. So with that being said, we're going to watch this video and talk about it.
And destroyed a school where local officials say refugee families were sheltering. Dozens of people were killed. Israel's military says Hamas forces were operating there, but so far there is little evidence of that. MTS Taib has more.
I don't know what else to say. I mean, at this point, if you're watching, if you're a conservative, if you're pro-Israel, if you're just coming out of Iraq and seeing this, and you heard the first 17 seconds of this report, Israel attacked a school where refugees were taking shelter and 40 people were killed because Hamas was there, except there is no evidence that Hamas was there. Israel is very, very clearly in the wrong. Very clearly in the wrong. They have been in the wrong since the very beginning. For the past 70 years, but there's a lot more history than this quick little discussion can get into. And the fact that Israel continues to commit these acts of terrorism against Palestinians, and the fact the United States of America does nothing, even though Joe Biden gave a declaration of sorts, stop committing acts of atrocity and let's start winding this thing down, Israel is flagrantly disregarding that. Never mind flouting the ICC, flouting the United Nations. And that was just in the first 17 seconds of reporting.
Dazed, bloodied, and terrified. These are just some of the survivors who were sheltering in the UN school when it was targeted in an Israeli airstrike. A CBS News team was at the Al-Aqsa Hospital in the central city of Deir al-Balah, where the remains of at least 30 people were also brought. Tensions in Jerusalem have also soared after tens of thousands of Israelis marched through the Old City for Jerusalem Day, an annual celebration of what Israel calls the reunification of the east and west of the city following.
Hello there, Ocean. Oshun. I think you corrected me the other day on how to pronounce it. I apologize. We're starting off heavy. I can tell you that right now. Israel is murdering people, committing acts of terrorism, genocide. I mean, honestly, at this point, I don't even know that there's just one word to describe what Israel is doing to the Palestinians. Meanwhile, there's tens of thousands of people having a happy celebration in Jerusalem, which is, I believe, still the capital after the Trump administration made it so, causing even more tensions in the Middle East, especially between Israel and Palestine.
The 1967 Arab-Israeli War.
This is one of the most controversial parts of the Jerusalem Day March, when these young protesters marched through this area, the Muslim quarter, which critics say is designed to antagonize Palestinians.
I mean, there you have it. This isn't just the Israeli government. This isn't just Netanyahu, the foreign ministry, the military defense council, what have you. It's the Israeli people. The people of Israel, the colonizers, are also in cahoots and supportive of these atrocities. They are literally celebrating as an act of intimidation in the Muslim quarter of Jerusalem.
March, Palestinians and journalists were attacked, some brutally. And as chants of death to Arabs rang out, our cameras were blocked from filming.
You're going to try to do my job.
We were then kicked and shoved as Israeli police forced us to leave. For CBS Mornings, Imtiaz Tayeb, East Jerusalem.
I mean, quite literally, this is what law enforcement in America are doing to students who are protesting this very same conflict. There is no difference. We are just as complicit as Israel, who is committing the acts of atrocities themselves. We are aiding and abetting, whether tacitly or explicitly, with arms trade and funding. I don't understand how history can truly be repeating itself, blaring on the loudest possible frequency that these are crimes being committed, and there is still enough counter-propaganda in existence to where those people, that government, and that country are considered the good guys. I don't understand. I truly don't understand, and it's infuriating. Let's see what the State Department has to say.
If you were born before 1971, you must see.
That wouldn't be necessarily a bad thing.
All right, noted. Let me start with some opening comments. The United States remains deeply concerned with the Georgia Dream Party's anti-democratic actions, as well as its recent statements and rhetoric. These actions risk derailing Georgia's European future and run counter to the Georgian Constitution and the wishes of its people. Secretary Blinken recently announced a comprehensive review of all bilateral cooperation between the United States and Georgia. As part of that review, the department implemented a new visa restriction policy to address these actions under Section 212A3C of the Immigration and Nationality Act. Today, under this policy, we are taking steps to impose visa restrictions on dozens of Georgian individuals. This includes individuals responsible for or complicit in, and immediate family members of those responsible for or complicit in, undermining democracy in Georgia, such as by undermining freedoms of peaceful assembly and association, violently attacking peaceful protesters, intimidating civil society representatives.
The audacity of the United States to point fingers against anyone, any other country, for violent attacks against peaceful protesters. What do you call Texas and what they are doing to students protesting today? What do you call Kent State? What do you call the Kent State massacre by the National Guard? Now, granted, yes, I agree with the words that he is saying, that a country should not be doing that to, its citizenry. Of course, I agree with that. But it's the audacity to have America say that while they are blatantly in the process of violating protesters' rights. That's obscene.
And deliberately spreading disinformation at the direction of the
And deliberately spreading disinformation. Isn't that literally, not figuratively, not hyperbole, no exaggeration, is that not literally what Fox News, which is not a news network, it is an entertainment network, which is proven in court because they were challenged in court, isn't that exactly what's going on? Isn't that exactly what the far-right caucus in our Congress and Senate are doing right now? Is that not what Trump is doing right now? Like, again, the audacity of our State Department shaking its little finger against Georgians. Meanwhile, the United States of America is committing each and every single one of those acts. And look, it's at 111. Those of you who are spiritual, like, it doesn't get more blatant of a sign than that, right?
Georgian government. This first tranche of visa restrictions comprises members of the Georgian Dream Party, members of parliament, law enforcement, and private citizens. It remains our hope that Georgia's leaders will reconsider their actions and take steps to move forward with their nation's long-stated democratic and Euro-Atlantic aspirations. But if they do not, the United States is prepared to take additional actions.
Can we take additional actions in America to ensure democracy?
Can you give us any better idea of how many dozen?
A few dozen. This is the first tranche. It is a few dozen.
Okay, a couple dozen could be read as 2. A few, does that mean 3?
Around that. It is between 2 and 3 dozen. We don't generally give out specific numbers, but it's between 2 and 3 dozen. And I want to emphasize this is a first tranche of sanctions.
And have these people been notified? Do you know?
They have not been notified. We typically don't notify people, but they find out if they try to come to the United States.
Well, no, that you do notify them if they have an existing visa.
Correct. If they have an existing visa.
Has anyone been notified that their existing visa has been revoked?
I doubt it has happened because we have just put this into effect today. But for those, if there are people in that category, they would be notified subsequent to this.
Unless anyone has anything else on this?
Yeah. Air conditioning. Yeah, good.
Any idea how
for the benefit of everyone in the room, not just me. Matt too.
Just follow up how they are selected. We know that there are 80 odd, MPs that voted for the law. How did you select 2,000, 3,000 out of 86?
So first of all, I can't give you specific names. I know that's not the exact question, but just as a reminder to everyone that visa records are to start to alleviate the suffering that is happening every day in Gaza. So we would hope for a response from Hamas.
Do you have any updates on the proposal that was put forward? Has Hamas put forward any official response? We heard overnight in a statement some sound like downtrodden response, but then Egypt has reportedly heard some encouraging signs. What's the latest?
We have not received an official response from Hamas. Obviously, we have been in conversation with our partners in the region, especially with the government of Egypt and with the government of Qatar, and those partners have been in conversations with the political wing of Hamas. But we have not yet received an official response to the proposal that's on the table. I don't have an update on that. We have wanted to see a response as soon as possible. We think this should be an urgent priority to get this ceasefire over the line to start to alleviate the suffering.
So back to the whole misinformation campaign that the United States of America has shook its finger at Georgia with. But at the same time, they're like saying Hamas needs to get this thing over the line when it is Israel who is saying we are not going to comply. We are not going to do any part of this. We are going to erase Hamas from existence. And as the State Department itself just said, there are 2 wings to Hamas, the combat wing and the political wing. And so the only people who can respond are the political wing. Well, how can the political wing respond to a ceasefire if Israel wants to erase them as well? This might even be unintentional, but this is exactly how misinformation spreads. This is how a narrative is written. And this is exactly why so many people think Israel is in the right and Hamas is just causing mischief and mayhem for Gazans. That's not at all what's happening.
Suffering that is happening every day in Gaza. So we would hope for a response from Hamas as soon as possible, and we continue to wait.
And then can I ask on this deadly Israeli strike on a school that was housing IDPs in Gaza, what's your response to that?
So we have been in contact with the government of Israel about this strike. They have said to us essentially what they have said publicly, which is that, and this is their claim, that they were targeting 20 to 30 members of Hamas and other militant groups, that they used precision strike to target only one part of the building without hitting areas where civilians were sheltering. At the same time, We've seen the reports on the ground. We've seen the videos from the ground. We've seen the claims that 14 children were killed in this strike. And certainly when you see, if that is accurate, that 14 children were killed, those aren't terrorists. And so the government of Israel has said that they are going to release more information about this strike, including the names of those who died in it. We expect them to be fully transparent in making that information public.
Okay, but where is the punitive measures? Where is the accountability? You yourself, the State Department spokesperson, literally just said that the evidence that we are literally seeing with our own eyes from the ground is in direct contradiction to the claims made by the Israeli state. So where's the sanctions? Where's the accountability, right? If we're going to hold Georgia accountable for, being mean to protesters and, other acts of corruption, as he outlined, Israel is literally committing war crimes. Where's the sanctions there? Where's the harsh measures there? Again, as president, Israel would have been sanctioned into the ground. Our funding and military support to them would have been eliminated. It would have been reduced to zero. And then we would have gone in to Israel to arrest Netanyahu and his administration to send them to The Hague. That is what would have happened in my administration, literally the same day that the October 7th strike happened and they just started massacring people willy-nilly without any sort of remorse or thought behind it. As soon as they started committing war crimes, that would have been it. To be fair, Israel's been committing war crimes for decades throughout the entire partnership of the United States and Israel. So it's almost a misnomer to say that I would have done it as soon as that attack happened. They needed to be held accountable immediately, long before October 7th, 20, 30, 40, 70 years ago. And those are the conversations that we're unable to have because we're trying to play, I don't even know what we're trying to play. We're just giving kid gloves to Israel right now, but not even a harsh word, just we expect transparency. This is insane.
U.S. weapons used in this strike?
I don't have any update to that. I'd refer to the government of Israel to that question.
How does this not cross the red line that the president laid out, several weeks ago?
Thank you, Miss Ma'am. That is literally the question that should be at the forefront of everyone's thoughts. How is this not crossing the red line that the United States actually set? After months of atrocities, we finally drew a red line, and now it's being crossed, and we're still doing nothing. Let's hear it.
Ago, this is the second incident in less than 2 weeks where we've seen a pretty large civilian toll on what was supposed to be a precision strike.
So with respect to the policy that the president announced, he was speaking specifically to a large-scale operation in Rafah, and we have not yet seen a large-scale operation conducted in Rafah.
Okay. So, as long as Israel just murders one building worth of people every week or so, you get one missile strike, you get one bombing, you get one act of terror a week. What?
That said, we have seen strikes that put civilians in danger well before the president said that, and we have made clear to the government of Israel that we expect them to do everything that they can to minimize civilian harm. We've been through this before. It applies in this situation too. It is a difficult situation if it is true that you have this site where Hamas is hiding inside a school, other militants are hiding inside a school.
Okay. I don't know if you know this, but a school is not a lawful target in the Geneva Conventions. It just isn't. It just isn't. And yeah, does that mean some bad actors can hole up in a school, a church, or a hospital and conduct operations out of it? Sure, that is certainly possible. And there are extreme considerations that have to be taken to minimize civilian casualty. A precision missile strike isn't that. And of course, they didn't actually do any sort of confirmation that there even was Hamas activity out of there. It's just a claim. Oh, shucks, I guess we were wrong. I thought there was Hamas there. It just looked Hamas-y to me. So Matt Miller is being an extremely bad actor. Extremely disingenuous. I'm appalled.
Those individuals are legitimate targets, but at the same time, they're embedded near civilians. Israel has a right to try and target those civilians, but they also have the obligation to minimize civilian.
I mean, he clearly misspoke, but I mean, that Israel has the right to target civilians. I mean, maybe that's what he meant. I don't know.
Civilian harm and take every step possible to minimize civilian harm. So that's why we were pressing the government of Israel and the IDF to be completely transparent.
But pressing them how? With what? You need to be transparent. There isn't even an or else. Where's the or else?
About what happened here. We want to know the facts as much as anyone.
Have they taken every step possible?
We have seen them take improvements over time, but still, if it bears true that this strike resulted in the death of 14 children, the results aren't where they need to be. So it gets back to this question of intent and results. Even if the intent is what the IDF has said publicly, that they were trying to use a precision strike just to target 20 to 30 militants. If you have seen 14 children die in that strike, that shows that something went wrong. That said, these are all facts that need to be verified, and that's what we want to see happen. Go ahead, Simon. I'll come to you, Simon.
To follow up on the broader issue of civilian harm, so we had this NSM process that came to an end, and you came to these specific conclusions that
this $99 drone has some
didn't lead to any impact on provision of arms to Israel. Now that kind of 90-day process with the NSM is finished, I guess there's an annual NSM requirement for you. But just to sort of be clear, as of now, what kind of are there any timelines you can give on when you're going to be able to make conclusions regarding Israel's conduct? You know, is there a date when all of these, or at least some of the assessments that you've been making since the beginning of the war might be completed and you can actually make a definitive?
There's not a definitive date I can give you standing here today. I can tell you that there are a number of reviews going on of specific incidents, and those continue. As we said, or as the report said, the NSM 20 report that we released, it's often difficult to come to definitive conclusions in the middle of the war where we don't have access to information on the ground. Doesn't mean it's impossible.
Why don't we have access to information on the ground? Is it possibly because the journalists have been targeted since day one, and that they are that civilians, that Israeli citizens are also attacking journalists? I mean, I mean, what's the difference between this and Goebbels? Literally, what is the difference between this guy and Goebbels? Literally. Replace Palestinians with Jews during the Holocaust. Literally, replace those two words. And that guy with Goebbels. And the American flag with the Nazi flag. What is the difference? Please tell me what the difference is. I would love to hear it. They are justifying bombing a school as collateral damage while Israelis celebrate the killing of the children in that school. Well, technically, they're celebrating the Jerusalem Day or whatever, while chanting death to Arabs. AZV, welcome back. Hello. This is the heavy part of our stream, as it turns out. We got right into Palestine. It's not that I wanted to get it out of the way. It's just, obviously, that's perhaps the most pressing headline today. So... And we're going over the State Department, and essentially the United States State Department is like, yep, Israel is committing crimes. We told them not to. We're investigating all of the crimes that they have committed, but because they're Israel, we're not going to do anything about it, and stop asking us about it. That's where we're at.
Possible. We look at it, we sort through it, we take all the information that we can and try to use that to make our best judgments, but it does make it difficult. So that said, we have a number of these reviews going on. We want to see them wrapped up as soon as they can, but they're difficult and time consuming. You have to look at facts, and sometimes you have to make legal determinations as well that are informed by those facts, and that's what we continue to do.
Will you make public the results of those reviews?
It's hard for me to say what we will. It's hard.
No, the short answer is no. If the United States finds that Israel is culpable in war crimes, acts of genocide, wrongdoing, what have you, that's not going to be made public. Let's just be very clear. Not by this administration. 2028, the Ronan administration, though, you bet your ass that is being made public.
For me to say what we will do with the result that has not yet finished, I can tell you that there have been some, I've said this before, there have been some that have been finished and have found to be no violations, right? You can think about how this might work. Same if you think about anything.
What? Excuse me? Oh my God. We've investigated Israeli war crimes and acts of genocide and have found that they were not, in fact, war crimes or acts of genocide. Excuse me? What were you investigating? The IDF's, lunch proposal? How they cleaned their guns? Yeah, sure, that wasn't violating any laws. But literally, you have IDF soldiers posting on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter about literally hog-tying men in their home while either raping or plundering their female companions of their underwear, their blouses, or their jewelry. Excuse me? Just to add on what was said, they were also chanting, Muhammad is dead in the Aqsa Mosque as well, which he is. They mean it in a derogatory way. Yes, that's exactly the early in the other video that we were watching a moment ago. That was what the reporter said before he was taken away by the IDF and before the Israeli celebrators started assaulting the journalists that were there. Ronan 2028. I mean, that's why we're here. That's why this is in the background, right? I think I am going to have to buy an American flag and a presidential flag, and I'm just going to have to. We could do a write-in campaign. You know what's interesting about write-in campaigns? I think for the majority of write-in campaigns, you still have to be somehow filed in each and every single state according to those states' regulations as a write-in candidate. But technically, if all of us, 270 million voting age people, just wrote me in whether I could be or not, that would mean nobody else would get the vote and they wouldn't have a choice.
Kind of investigation where you take a broad, say a big number of cases, you can look at some and see right away that no, they don't rise to the level of violation, some that bear more scrutiny. So there were some that we looked at and were able to take out of the system quickly, and there are a great deal of others that are going forward and we're continuing to review.
Without trying to go through the laundry list of, there are a lot of cases here, but are there any that you can give us as an example of this came up in the briefing, for example, there's lots of cases that came up in the briefings. If there are any of those where we've asked you about it and then you've gone away and looked at it and found we're happy that there was no violation here?
I just can't give you that kind of specificity from here.
Home Depot hates when you do this, but they can't.
A backhanded way of saying we're not going to admit to Israeli crimes.
Right.
This particular area, you called on me. You called on me, right?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Sorry, I thought. Yeah. Okay.
Never known you to be shy, Saeed.
No, from time to time, So
I don't believe that. Go ahead.
So it's with old age. Anyway, so this area in Serat was an area that the Israelis even did not ask people to evacuate. I mean, this is really refugees. They killed 64 people. We don't know how many was killed. I mean, what possible advantage? I want to ask you because the other day you said.
Is it just me, or is this actually difficult to hear? Because it's only coming out of one speaker for me, and it just sounds not good.
That maybe Sinwar prefers, the safety of the tunnel.
Thank you, Dissector. Honestly, my day was pretty busy. I was practicing making shorts, and then I realized that my mic was all the way over there, so that was a problem. And then, of course, I wanted to make sure that today's stream covered the right news headlines. I mean, of course, we could talk about whatever pop idol did, whatever, but I believe this takes precedence over some, I don't know, a feud on TYT, for instance. Like, who cares? But yeah, this is making me a little upset because our State Department is basically the propaganda machine of Israel, and it's disturbing because we are literally seeing the Holocaust be playing out right before our eyes, except instead of Nazi Germany and Jews, it is Israel and Palestinians, except on top of that, it's America backing them. There wasn't even a superpower backing Germany at the time. It was just Germany doing it. Now it's Israel with the backing of America. It's just disgusting. AZV, they like to say what Hamas did was barbaric, and the reality is Israel is 10 times worse than anything Hamas has ever done. When you look at this evil, you must admit that a resistance force is necessary. And in fact, I'm glad you brought that up. In fact, and I don't know if I actually was smart enough to keep that link safe and accessible, because that would have made too much sense. I did not. So the Geneva Conventions in 1974 in the 1970s and the 1980s, I don't remember the specific dates, the UNGA declared specifically for Palestine on those two occasions and since that they have the right to self-determination, and therefore, according to Article or Section 1 of the Geneva Conventions, they also have the right to resist their occupier with violence, up to and including with violence. So, yes, Hamas being the defense force, or the self-defense force de facto, is legally justified. Now, am I going to say that a bombing at a concert was a justified act of rebellion? No, I'm definitely not going to say that. Am I also going to say that Hamas did 10-7? I don't think they did. Personally, I don't think Hamas would have been stupid enough to attack a concert, especially right in front of the Holocaust memorial. That would have been begging for trouble. I think this is the equivalent of the 9/11 attacks. It seems like an act of terrorism, but it was an excuse for a power to go invade and achieve a goal that it had no other means of achieving other than this act of terror. And that is what I will stick to. What do they expect? For people to sit there and take it? Evidently, they must resist the evil, yes. And by the way, folks, Israel has been doing this for 70 years. And Hamas has attacked maybe once every 3 years or something like that. And yes, we can argue that it has been acts of terrorism. But what is Israel doing to Gaza if not acts of terrorism? Again, take the United States. We captured slaves, brutally assaulted those slaves anytime they tried to resist or rebel. And there were slave rebellions in America. Don't get it twisted. We did even worse to indigenous Americans. The Trail of Tears comes to mind. And when those indigenous tribes then resisted and burnt down settler settlements or colonies or what have you, was that acts of terrorism that they attacked civilian encampments? Or should they have stuck to the military and law enforcement of the time? Acts of resistance when you're occupied take different forms. Again, I personally wouldn't have suggested targeting a concert, and I don't believe Hamas was behind it. I don't see how Hamas could have thought that would have been a good idea. I just don't see that. It has been documented that the IDF attacked many of its own people. Exactly. They killed their own hostages as they were being released by Hamas. And again, Hamas hasn't committed a single act of violence in the past 5-6 months. Like, that's, again, reportable. That's, again, verifiable. And please, I encourage you, Dissector, I encourage you, AZV and Oshun, please fact check me on that. Hamas hasn't even been militaristically active, and these atrocities continue. It's obscene. That's all that can be said, is it's obscene.
The comfort of the tunnel to coming out and so on. So why would Hamas militants, what possible tactical advantage or strategic advantage for them to be...
Exactly.
Isn't it just like, that red herring, something that they...
So I can't hear this guy very well, but he basically said, what's the strategic advantage of Hamas to be conducting acts of violence, especially at this stage in the game? That's the question.
Time and time and time again as, a cover to continue to kill people. I mean, considering that, 130 civilians were killed in the preceding 24 hours.
So the advantage to Hamas, and it is a sickening advantage to them, is that they think they can hide behind civilians and prevent from being struck.
Oh my God. Are you kidding me? I can't with this. I mean, we need to watch this now. I mean, we need to hear the rest of this response, but this... Folks, I'm telling you right now, I am trying to remain calm. I'm trying to not be one of those unhinged streamers that just... Right, I am trying very hard not to do that, but this man and his responses are pushing me. They are pushing me. And I don't know what the strikes are, like how much I'm allowed to swear on streams before I get like some sort of strike. But this guy, Hamas is hiding behind civilians. Hamas hasn't been doing anything. And the political wing is, all they're asking is for the violence to stop. Even if Hamas gave up all of the hostages that may or may not exist of Israel, Israelis aren't going to give up the Palestinians, and the violence will continue. They'll just say, like, oh, thank you for our hostages back. Now we're going to eradicate you off the face of the earth anyway. They will find some excuse. Like, yeah, Hamas, the freedom fighting force and part of the political wing of the remaining refugees of Palestine are hiding behind their citizens rather than what exactly?
And there have been times, I can tell you, there have been times that we know that Israel has passed on taking strikes because there were Hamas militants who were embedded directly with civilians, and they made the decision that they could not take a strike against a militant without...
I mean, to be fair, that would be shocking. If that's true, if that is true, that's shocking. But that was probably also months ago. I would love to hear when Israel restrained itself from massacring Palestinians. Yeah, this guy is high on something. What is the point in hiding behind civilians if Israel doesn't even differentiate between an infant and an armed fighter? And isn't that a statement to say, to put into words? Israel does not differentiate between an infant and an armed fighter. They don't. They just straight up don't.
Causing disproportionate civilian harm. So that has happened, and there are militants who were not. There were strikes that they did not take because of that reason. Now, with respect to this one, we need to know exactly what happened. As I said, and as you just pointed out, there are conflicting accounts about what exactly happened here, and that's why we need to get to the bottom.
There isn't conflicting accounts. There's what happened and what they say happened.
I speak about myself, but one knows from reading so much and so on. I mean, the safety of the rubble area, the safety of the destroyed cities and buildings and so on.
And they're attacking refugee sites that are supposed to be no strike zones.
There would be no incentive whatsoever for them to go and be among their families and so on, because the food is probably better in the tunnels or in these places. Safety is a lot better. Why would they do it? Or just, anything that Israel can say.
So number one, I just think established exactly why they would do it. Number two, I just don't think as a factual matter it's actually in dispute that they have done it, and they continue to do it. Yeah. We have seen clear, convincing evidence. Some of that evidence has been made public of them hiding in civilian targets going back before October 7th, and that has continued to be one of their primary tactics since October 7th.
I tell you what.
Okay. Hamas, as a organization, if we can even be generous enough to call it that at this point, Hamas is a ragtag band of rebels at best, terrorists at worst. I will freely admit that at worst, Hamas are just angry, bloodthirsty terrorists. That is what they are at worst. At best, they're rebels with a cause and no resources, no infrastructure. That at best, at worst. Okay, Hamas doesn't have uniforms. Hamas doesn't have training. They don't have guns. They don't have money. They don't have funding. They don't have like a haircut or a hat that they wear. Hamas are just people. So to say that they're embedded with civilians and that's just their modus operandi is false. I mean, very disingenuous. Secondly, it's what happened in the global war on terror in Afghanistan and Iraq. Some unfortunate woman saw her husband get murdered before her very eyes by an American Marine. So what does she do? She picks up the rifle and starts shooting at the Marine. Is she ISIS? Is she Al-Qaeda? Or is she angry that her husband was just taken from her? Same thing with the children. Same thing with other fighters. Their brother just died. Their uncle just died. Their grandfather just died. Their son, their daughter just died. Thank you. And the response is to take up the fight that they can no longer wage. So Hamas could be every single last Palestinian who is desperately trying to survive, given the right circumstances. And that's why this war will not end, according to Israel, until every Hamas person is killed. But when the entire population can be deemed Hamas at any given moment, what does that tell you? What does that tell you? Oh my God.
And I should say, launching, in addition to hiding, launching attacks, launching mortar attacks, and launching other attacks.
When? No. When was the last Hamas attack against Israel? Please. How many times has Hamas attacked Israel? Is Hamas still in power? Why is Israel bombing Gaza? How many Israel soldiers have died in Gaza? What is Hamas fighting for? There is not a single article that is showcasing that Hamas issued an attack. Because I promise you, if Hamas actually issued an attack, initiated an attack, mortars are the thing, rockets, what have you, that would be international news. It would be played on Fox, MSNBC, CNN. It would be played on PBS during Sesame Street if Hamas had actually somehow leveraged an attack against Israel. And I can't find a single instance. Cannot find one. Literally unable to can. No. You can miss me with that. Miller, you can absolutely miss me with that. Let me catch a breather real quick.
Civilian infrastructure.
Not from these areas. I mean, they want to launch attacks where the Israeli military is actually present.
AZV. I have never seen such a cowardly group of people. They can only throw bombs from afar and use mercenaries like Blackwater. They don't have the guts to fight their own war on the ground. You can't deny that Hamas has fought with bravery because they have a real cause. And the IDF is supposed to be one of the best trained militaries in the world. So why can't they go into Gaza and find Hamas? Exactly. And this goes back to the war on terror. Do you honestly expect the American public to believe it took you 10 years to find Osama bin Laden, who was hiding in a compound in Iran for 10 years with his wives? Excuse me? When it only took 4 months to find Saddam Hussein hiding in a hole. Are you kidding?
And so on, not like
maybe,
and then so that's where they.
Just to cool off, maybe we should do like a quick article on like what's Kim Kardashian doing? Like what nonsense has she done? Oh, Pakistan. I'm sorry. Iran. I thought it was Iran because like we're currently in a conflict with them, but it's not like we're friendly with Pakistan either. So thank you for correcting me on that.
Could be bombed.
But like I was saying, we might have to do something a little lighter than this because I'm just gonna get heated. Maybe we can do Caitlin Clark getting knocked around by that other basketball player. You know, maybe we'll hit that one next.
From the air and so on. I mean, you know, this thing that we keep hearing about human shield and so on. I just want to remind you that this is basically an Israeli thing, to the point where the Israeli Supreme Court told them you could not do it. You could not use Palestinian kids as human shields to wrap them around their jeeps and walk into the cities and so on.
This isn't echoing, by the way, is it?
So what possible? I mean, Israel has no credibility.
Because my microphone keeps initiating from this guy's talking. Sorry to go back, but did you say that 9/11 was an inside job? Can you explain why you believe that? So, I did say 9/11 was an inside job. There is the 9/11 report that has been not released to the public. It is still classified. I don't believe in the conspiratorial stuff, like, it was like the Illuminati or the Rockefellers or the Rothschilds or whatever else. I'm saying, looking at what historically transpired, the information that has been made public, which is that the Defense Department was notified with plenty of time to be aware that there was an impending attack by these terrorist organizations. And the fact that when you compare the destruction of the Twin Towers to controlled demolitions, they are exactly the same. And then there was a lack of airplane parts at the Pentagon. There was a lack of airplane parts at 9/11. And of course, there were witnesses on the ground that said they didn't even see the aircraft. So to that end, and never mind the guy who took out an insurance policy on the buildings right before it happened too. There's just entirely too much that went on that either A, we were aware and did nothing, or B, we conspired to let it happen, or C, we actually did the deed. It's only one of those three, because the consequence of that was invading Iraq and Afghanistan, staying in there for 20 years, finding Saddam, which is what Daddy Bush tried doing in the early 90s, finishing the job in the early thousands in 4 months, and then staying there to take control over the oil and poppy fields that were in place. Mind you, during the same timeline is when the heroin epidemic started filtering into America, and the opioid crisis from pharmaceuticals became prevalent because they were pushing opium, which is made from heroin. Are you saying there were bombs planted on the buildings? Again, that I cannot say definitively. I am saying that between the way those buildings collapse and the way demolition is done, something isn't adding up to say that it was a aircraft hitting the building and that somehow causing the collapses to occur. Could have been bombs, it could have been thermite, it could have been anything, really. We won't know until that report is ever released. And again, and perhaps I should make that an official, highlighted policy and not just an undertone in my website, but between the Epstein files and several other, I guess, getting to the bottom of the conspiracy policies that I have on my website, that would be one of them, because the people deserve to know. And then if we do find out that we either allowed it to happen or facilitated it to happen or did it ourselves, we can then take appropriate action against the administration and existing parties and hold them accountable. That's the main thing, right? If something gets hit like that, you would think it would either go like this or just that portion would collapse, right? And then the rest of the building would maybe have structural damage, but it wouldn't just keep going ka-clunk, 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 right? That is a controlled demolition. There is a distinct difference. And again, I'm not getting into the conspiracy theories. I'm saying the facts that are made public concerning the Twin Towers attack do not add up to a terrorist attack. And at best, we were aware of it and unable to stop it. That is the best case scenario, is that we were aware of it and we still couldn't do anything about it. That is the absolute best case scenario. The worst case scenario is America, were actually the ones initiating it. Everything else in between is a mix of knowing about it, not doing anything about it, knowing about it, doing very little, etc. Do you really think the CIA would release the real report if there is one? Yes, I do, because after so many years, they either automatically get released or they will just, with enough public demand, it will get released. I think the JFK files are actually supposed to be released in like 20 years or something. So we can do it now, or we can do it in 20 years. It's the same reason why extraterrestrial documentation and reports were held under lock and key, but then released in 2018. It's because that timeline expired, I believe. How do we know what we knew? Well, we do know what we saw, what the recordings were, and we do know what the evidence was that was presented to the public. And we do know that after investigations also revealed conflicting stories and conflicting evidence to what the official government gave. And I'm not talking about the Alex Joneses. I'm talking about boots on the ground journalism that was suppressed. And then Oshun, which would be great actually, could you, if it's quick, could you copy and paste a link to at least one of those hearings? That would, again, add more credence to, well, that we knew and that we did something about it, that we didn't do something about it.
Mass fighters are hiding there. We have not seen any evidence.
So,
they have not shown us any of these people.
What I
that
just
were
said
killed.
is Israel said to us they're going to release the names of militants that they have killed. If that's true, if they do it, the entire world will be able to see that and judge. But I'm going to wait until we see what happens.
Can I ask you a couple more questions, if I may? You know, and yesterday there.
I don't know if I can take too much more of Matt Miller basically sugarcoating Israeli war crimes. Let's see. What? Well, my stream was supposed to cover. What were we supposed to cover today? Putin's nuclear warning. Okay. Let's not that that's a lighter topic at all. Putin threatens nuclear actions. Ooh, as of 21 hours ago. So this was today. Well, technically yesterday. So, oh boy.
Hey, so whether you need this or not, this laser slingshot.
Vladimir Putin has warned the West about using all available means to defend its sovereignty. When questioned about the risks of nuclear war over Ukraine, Mr. Putin said this morning Russia's nuclear doctrine permits the use of weapons in response to a number of threats. He says the West has repeatedly accused Russia of threatening nuclear, but says this is wrong, and brought attention to America's use of nuclear in World War II.
For some reason, the West believes that Russia will never use it. If someone's actions threaten our sovereignty and territorial integrity, we consider it possible for us to use all means at our disposal. This should not be taken lightly.
And that, of course, is something that he's threatened before.
On the anniversary of D-Day...
Okay. So what it sounds like is Putin said, we have them, and if we needs to use them, we will. But isn't that basically what every country with nuclear weapons says? We got some, and if we needs to use them, we's gonna. That doesn't seem like the threat that it was made out to be, but...
Russia was making new friends and new threats. The St. Petersburg Economic Forum was the backdrop to Vladimir Putin's latest verbal volley that Russia could send missiles to other nations to target the West.
We are thinking that if they consider it possible to deliver such weapons to the combat zone, to launch strikes on our territory and create problems for us, why don't we have the right to supply weapons of the same type to some regions of the world where they can be used to launch strikes on sensitive facilities of the countries that do it to Russia?
So, I am going to make a point and a statement that many probably aren't going to like. He's right. This is absolutely true. It's wrong to do nuclear arms proliferation. It is wrong to facilitate an arms race, but he's not wrong. If the United States can proliferate arms throughout the world and throughout other regions and theaters and what have you, why can't China? Why can't Russia? Why can't any other country? We're the only ones allowed to act like an empire. The United States is the only empire that's allowed to spread weapons around to threaten its perceived enemies. I mean, not that Putin should. Let's be clear. I am not advocating that he should. I'm also saying that America shouldn't be doing it either, that it is causing unnecessary tension in those regions. But he brings up a valid point. Why is it only the West that's allowed to do this? Why is Russia and China not allowed? Those are valid arguments. If you cannot sleep because of the Russian conflict, imagine Ukraine as Palestine. Imagine Russia as the United States. Again, I'm not pro-Russia. I'm not trying to get Soviet Russia back in USSR. I'm not pro-Putin. I'm saying that he makes a valid argument. That is a very valid argument. It's an argument that shouldn't have to be made, though. And it's the same argument that conservatives make about gun rights. Well, bad guys have guns, so why shouldn't we have guns? Why should you make it harder for me to get a gun? It's like, buddy, you're missing the point. Guns are becoming the problem. Yes, we have the Second Amendment. Yes, we should be allowed to have guns to prevent a tyrannical government and so on and so forth. But you're missing the part where it says well regulated. So again, with regards to nuclear weapons or missile systems or other weapon systems that Russia wants to share with, I don't know, Iran, Pakistan, or any of its other friendly nations, there should be a checks and a balance in place. Like, we're selling fighter jets to Israel, telling them, hey, you can use these for self-defense. What did Israel do in the 80s? Use them to attack people. What are they doing with them now? Bombing refugees and children. What we need to be doing is reducing the amount of arms, reducing the amount of military weaponry and hardware in circulation, not facilitating or exacerbating it. On nuclear weapons, I believe everyone or no one should have them. If Palestinians had nukes, none of this would be happening. I would not argue that everyone should have them. Because again, mutually assured destruction is not a deterrent. It just isn't. It literally isn't. And not every country has the means to actually safely store and protect nuclear weapons. Those payloads would just get stolen by from weaker nations by stronger nations, and that would just get blown out of proportion. Now, that being said, do we need nuclear weapons? We absolutely don't. What purpose does a nuclear weapon serve? Like, okay, say World War III happens and the nukes are launched. A nuclear weapon doesn't just explode and cause massive destruction on a target, evaporating it, turning it into mist, and erasing it from existence, right? It also irradiates the area for centuries, making it uninhabitable. Meaning, whatever target you launch a nuke at is off the board entirely. And if the point is conquest or victory, what victory can you hope to gain from the nuclear fallout? And it won't even take that much because we have megaton nuclear warheads now. The hydrogen bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were kiloton bombs, and hydrogen at that. Significantly weaker, significantly less powerful from both the explosive and the nuclear effect. And I don't believe Nagasaki or Hiroshima are habitable. Are Nagasaki or Hiroshima still habitable? I don't think so. Oh, all right. So we're good, apparently. It only took around 50 or 60 years. So after the nuclear war and the fallout, I guess we could wait 50 or 60 years. But again, if this ends up being the entire global theater, where are we going to live for those 50 or 60 years? Armed with opinions. Are you some sort of leftist or something? Yes, I am. And, fun fact, wow, that is super bright. That was not what I was going for. Let's turn down the sun. We actually got into the political spectrum yesterday, and I have taken the initiative to keep that up and online. For all intents and purposes, please click on that. And when I say I'm a member of the left, Rule by intellectuals and professionals overseeing democratic welfare state, heavy restrictions on wealth acquisition and privatization, heavily unionized workplaces, heavily subsidized public services, small or non-existent military. The small or non-existent military part is where I would probably be more conservative, because I do believe in a strong military. I do not believe in an empirical force that is basically waging war to justify its existence. But we should have a strong military. So, intellectuals and professionals overseeing democratic welfare state. What does that mean? What that means is universal healthcare, universal education, universal housing, universal income. Heavy restrictions on wealth acquisition, absolutely. Tax the rich. Eliminate income tax caps for Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, so they will be solvent. Enforced profit sharing, absolutely, 100%. Billionaires shouldn't exist. You can get a, you know how in Call of Duty, it's called prestiging. You hit a certain level, you prestige, and you start over again. We can do that for the billionaires. Hey, you hit $1 billion. Now you get to start over again. Hey, you hit $1 billion again. You get to start all over again. I'm not going to sit here and say otherwise. The billionaire class is literally hoarding $44 trillion worth of wealth. And it is because we, the people, the workforce, actually facilitated the labor to generate that wealth, and we are being left behind. Again, our government is giving laissez-faire money to the rich through the PPP loans, forgiving it outright, printing $36 trillion during the pandemic, and not accounting for it at all. So yes, heavy restrictions on industry, private industry, and wealth acquisition. I would very much so be the left. Now, since your comment disappeared, sorry about that. That's unfortunate. Anyway, you have less than 1 year. Trump is coming back. Plan accordingly. If he's in prison, he's not coming back. Isn't it true if Iraq genuinely had nukes, the U.S. would not invade? No, that's not true. I believe the United States would have invaded regardless, especially if they had nukes, because that would have been a clear and present danger to the region. And the thing is too, right? Like, the reason why there are so much sanctions on nations achieving nuclear status is because a lot of the nations who are trying to achieve nuclear status would actually wield them without concern for the fallout. Does that make sense? Let's see. I couldn't really find a straightforward clip from the 9/11 Commission, but there was a memo a month before 9/11 that was presented during the hearings titled Bin Laden Determined to Strike in the U.S., which Bush ignored, along with tons of intelligence that summer. We're not liberals, we're leftists. Exactly, because liberals are actually the right at this point. And that's why I shared the proton thing. But I'm fairly certain that armed with opinions came here to troll, and that's fine. There is no such thing as bad publicity. Putin basically said we have the right, or we should have the right to arm our allies as well, is what it sounds to. Let's see. What was the other major topic? Because that wasn't a topic at all. That was just making a point, I think. Bannon's prison fate. Yes. Again, we touched on this a little bit earlier. Bannon to face jail time July 1. Damn it. I keep forgetting that if I type 1 on the keyboard, that'll happen. Sorry about that.
What's your credit card debt balance?
Great Lord. I don't think they would invade Iraq, would threaten to bomb Israel. Over 200 congressmen and women are funded by AIPAC. I don't think they would accept that risk. I don't know. Again, we invaded Iraq because of concern of weapons of mass destruction, and we never found any, right? So if we actually had them, that's kind of the point. We thought they did have them, and we invaded. So to your point, and I'm not arguing with you or trying to undermine the point that you're trying to make. The United States of America invaded Iraq because we thought they actually had them. So if Iraq had nuclear capability, would we have invaded? Yes, because we did. We did invade thinking they had nuclear capability, and it turns out that they didn't. They knew they never had them in reality. That's one of the reasons why we should release the documentation about 9/11 and the military intelligence that led to the global war on terror in the first place. That's what I would say. Okay. So armed with opinions is just trolling. That's fine. However, it is disruptive. So enough of that.
Lawyers, and we're going to go all the way to Supreme Court.
By the way, I have no qualms about discussing conservative policy or beliefs or values, but let's be adults in the room. Let's actually have a discussion and not just attack people. That to me is foolish. I don't understand that. So, carrying on.
If you have to, but I want to say something specifically about the Justice Department. Merrick Garland, Lisa Monaco, the entire Justice Department. They're not going to shut up Trump. They're not going to shut up Navarro.
So wait a second. Why are we listening to Steve Bannon talk? That's not what we wanted to hear about it, not just giving him a stage here. There we go.
Steve Bannon is headed to prison. A federal judge today.
I have seen this guy on other leftist channels. He's not very intelligent and just trolling. Again, we're not going to feed trolls here. But for anybody who is conservative leaning, I don't care if you are a red hat wearing MAGA supporter. I am happy to have you on my channel. I'm happy to have discussions with you. You might be surprised how much we actually agree on. You won't be surprised on how much we don't agree on, though. But I'm willing to have conversations. I am not going to stand for trolling. We don't do that here. And that goes for leftists, too. We're not going to just sit here and come up with the attacking or conflating Israel with Judaism. I banned somebody on the first day I started streaming because they wanted to conflate Judaism with the country of Israel and trying to make it a racial thing or anti-Semitic thing. So no, none of that's going to happen here either. You can not like Trump, you can not like Israel, but we're gonna keep it civil on this channel. Just to be clear.
They ordered him to start his sentence on July 1st. Bannon was found guilty on 2 counts of contempt of Congress for refusing to comply with a January 6th committee subpoena 2 years ago. Joining us now, MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin. Where is he going and for how long?
I'm not sure we know where he's going yet, but he has to self-surrender on July 1st, and he will serve a 4-month sentence. One of my colleagues did a calculation today, and she said that he is projected to be released, assuming he serves every day of his sentence, 4 days before Election Day this year.
Wow. Why did it take so long?
That's actually not good from an optics perspective. Again, Bannon, just like Trump, are not remorseful for their actions, and the contempt of Congress proves that in the case of Bannon. Now, think of it from a political perspective. You have spent 2 years appealing what you're claiming is an unlawful conviction and, appealing the jail time, so on and so forth, right? You've spent 2 years doing that. You would then immediately go in front of a podium and you say the same exact thing to the national audience, right? That man has taken a stand as a victim of the administration, of Democrats, and so on and so forth, much like what Trump is doing, which means every action he takes, every word he speaks, and every action leveraged against him will be twisted into a form of martyrdom, which means if Trump becomes the nominee and isn't somehow barred from running for election, and he is campaigning the way we can expect him to campaign, And 4 days before Election Day, Steve Bannon, after serving his 4 months, which I'm certain will involve some news articles where he's still somehow getting out into the news and so on and so forth, will improve Trump's chances of winning the election because it will stir up that martyrdom sensation. Judaism and Israel are certainly not the same thing, but I believe it is self-admittedly supposed to be a Jewish state. Correct. And that was discussed, historically that was discussed in 1919, that the Jewish people deserve a homeland and that should be in Palestine. That was discussed in 1919. And Israel was established as, again, to be the Jewish state. What happened, unfortunately, is that Zionism, an ideology that claims Judaism, right, is no different than the Spanish Inquisition or any of the other atrocities committed by Catholics or during the Crusades or whatever else have you, right? Each religion has their extremists. And for Judaism, that is Zionism, right? That is what it is conflated as. Zionism is as far from Judaism as ISIS is from Islam, as the Spanish Inquisition is from Christianity, right? But those things are associated with those religions. Yes. But just like the Holocaust was committed by a Catholic state, Germany, right? Are we going to call the Holocaust a Catholic massacre? Or are we going to call the Nazis what they were, the Nazis? So I think that's the main takeaway that we should have here with this.
Long to send him to prison. He was found guilty 2 years ago.
The judge, Carl Nichols, the same judge who lifted the stay today, found that it was appropriate to stay Bannon's sentence while he appealed that conviction, in part because Bannon said he couldn't have willfully been in contempt of Congress because he was relying on the advice of his then counsel, Robert Costello. That argument was soundly rejected by the D.C. Circuit in reliance on a case that comes from 1961. That's the same case that prevented Judge Nichols himself from allowing Bannon to make the argument at his trial. Still, Judge Nichols thought that maybe the D.C. Circuit would take a different view this time, stayed the sentence. Now that the D.C. Circuit has agreed that its precedent stands, Judge Nichols said,
Robert Costello.
All bets are off. You're Robert Costello. That's exactly right.
Making a comeback. Remind us about Robert Costello.
Well, Robert Costello was the defense's only substantive witness in the Trump Manhattan DA's case. He was there, of course, to say that another one of his almost clients, would-be clients, Michael Cohen, was lying when he recounted the various interactions that they had had before Cohen eventually decided to
And the
turn.
judge was not happy with Costello because Costello was not acting, in the judge's estimation, appropriately in court. He threatened him with contempt if he continued to mutter.
So I guess that's that. Steve Bannon is back in the news. He's going to make himself a martyr. I thought Trump and him had a bit of a falling out, but that may or may not be the case. That might be alleviated now because with Steve Bannon, again, going to play the victim, that is only going to help Trump in the long run. So with that, the horrors of social distancing. I mean, it truly is that asinine. What we're so the Fauci hearings, and that's what we'll do. Fauci testimony. How long is this? I guess we're gonna find out.
If you make at least 150 grand a year.
By the way, the grifters. I can't believe they're putting ads on Facebook now. It's bad enough that you see them on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, but now they're flooding our ads with, not that I appreciate ads in the first place, but now this is a 3-hour deal. How about we're definitely not going to do a 3-hour overview. We are not doing that. I guess there's various questions. Geez. So specifically, COVID response not backed by science. That's the one that everybody's flipping out about. Are we not getting that? All right. Let's do the origins.
Dr. Anthony
The
Fauci
articles.
on defense.
We could do articles. We could read articles. I don't know how how much people want to deal with articles, but the articles are what are really highlighting the disenfranchisement of that the Fauci's department, the CDC, were basically encouraging people to wear masks and social distance without any sort of scientific backing. But and you can USA Today, NCBI, Politico. I think this is NBC News. So there's varying accounts from varying sources that are all reputable, that are all covering this. And the reality is, right, to address a pandemic, masking is one of the first things you do. We did that in 1919 during the Spanish flu. We also did it during the bubonic plague in the Middle Ages. The Medici mask wasn't just for, giggles or for fashion. It was to prevent the inhalation of potential bugs. Now, granted, were they effective? I don't know. But even back then, they realized, hey, maybe we shouldn't be breathing in the air and potential other stuff from the infected. So to say that masking and social distancing doesn't have any scientific backing is kind of asinine. And it's not kind of, it is asinine. It's disingenuous. It just lacks any sort of intellectual argument whatsoever. COVID guidelines caused millions to suffer. Now Fauci admits there was no science behind it. Exactly. That's exactly. And the lady who wrote this was Nicole Russell, who is a national opinion columnist. So not even a journalist. It was her opinion, and she goes on a rant. Like, my daughters had trouble, and I was inconvenienced. And that's what it amounts to. And we'll listen to whatever this is. However, Americans, I love our country, I love our people, but we are some arrogant and entitled people at times. When we are inconvenienced, we are worse than toddlers. And the way we handled COVID was idiotic because nobody wanted to be inconvenienced. And how much lack of empathy do you have to have as a human being to not even do the barest minimum of staying 6 feet away from somebody? In fact, why are we getting this close to talk to people in the first place? That shouldn't be socially acceptable in the first place. But I digress. Yes, we should. I don't, again, that article or that comment that is part of the 3-hour deal. Ooh, that must have been... nope, the only video on this USA Today article is with Marjorie Taylor Greene. But let's hear about this.
You're dealing with a new outbreak. Things changed.
And dismissing claims he played any part in a suggested cover-up of COVID origins.
The accusation being circulated is absolutely false and simply preposterous.
The doctor, who retired 18 months ago, back in the spotlight as part of a Republican-led investigation into the pandemic's origins and response. A hearing at times turning testy.
Mind you, the pandemic occurred under the Trump administration, which was Republican, of which Dr. Fauci was in that administration dealing with it. So questioning Fauci is literally questioning Trump, but that correlation is not being made.
Mr. Fauci, because you're not doctor, that man does not deserve to have a license. As a matter of fact, it should be revoked and he belongs in prison.
Suspend.
Fauci explaining what he meant when he testified behind closed doors in January that the 6-foot social distancing rule sort of just appeared, according to transcripts. Now clarifying it came from the CDC with no clinical trials done.
You didn't feel an obligation as the lead scientist at the NIH to challenge that.
I've challenged the CDC multiple times.
Fauci served in his government role since 1984, advising 7 presidents of both parties, and was a prominent expert in the fight against diseases like HIV/AIDS. Back when COVID started spreading, he became the pandemic's public face, appearing in briefings, in magazines.
Here's Dr. Anthony Fauci.
I've been saying his
late
name
night
wrong.
shows.
Fauci.
But since then, he's become politically polarizing, alternately idolized or demonized. Overnight, Fauci saying the vitriol he faces, including on Capitol Hill, means he still gets death threats even while out of government service.
You have performances like that unusual performance by Marjorie Taylor Greene in today's hearing. Those are the kind of things that drive up the death threats.
Testifying emotionally now about the death threats his family has faced.
It is very troublesome to me. It is much more troublesome because they've involved my wife and my 3 daughters.
At these moments, how do you feel?
Terrible.
As for how prepared we are for the next pandemic, Dr. Fauci thinks in some respects we're better equipped to deal with one, but says he's disappointed with other areas from the COVID pandemic, like the divisiveness over a coherent response.
There you have it, folks. The CDC passed the regulation. Fauci said, hey, sounds all right. And historically, which is apparently lost on the entire Republican Party and this honestly just blatant attack on a man that was doing his job, there is no substance to it. It is not substantive to say that keeping your distance from someone. Okay, you know what? Let's not even go the Professor Ronan. If I'm coughing and I'm sick, if I have snot dribbling down my nose, my eyes are puffy and red, and you can see me sweating, and I'm like, are you gonna want to be this close to me? Let's be honest. If I'm sick, you're gonna not want to be anywhere near me. And if masks were a thing during that particular illness, wouldn't you be like, why aren't you wearing your mask? You look terrible. You are clearly sick. The hypocrisy is blatant because the reaction to a sick person would be to back away and either cover yourself up or to ask that they cover themselves up, or both. So let's not get it twisted. And I'm sorry I missed your comment. I mean, if you think about it, if someone was sick, it would be more likely you would get infected if this person was in your face. Less likely if the person is farther away. Which, okay, cool. We were on the same page there. So, sorry I didn't get to it, but we were on the same page. So, that's the news that we were going to cover today. Them's the news. The problem is that everything is political and we have to either idolize or demonize people. They can't just be a government official that does some things right and may also make some mistakes. And not only that, we can't apparently just implement common sense as a policy platform either. It's like, hey, guys, there's this pandemic going around. Maybe we should not be this close to one another. Again, why are we this close to one another anyway? I don't understand. I find that very uncomfortable. So, I guess we can check out other aspects of the news. What's this? What cat is let out of the bag? Rand Paul. Please let us know.
Hunt, thank you very, very much. We appreciate it. For more on this,
I still want strangers to stay away from me. I mean, am I right? You're right. You're right. Please stay away from me. And that's the problem with public transit too, right? Like there isn't enough separation. You put a bunch of people in there and that's an incubation farm right there. It doesn't matter if you're even healthy. The thing is, right? If I'm healthy and you're healthy, but the bacteria on my body and my immune system is different than the bacteria on your body and your immune system, we can still get each other sick. That's how that crap works. And again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a biologist, I'm not a medical professional, but I understand basic biology. Basic, very, very basic immunology. I don't know.
Let's bring in Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. Senator Paul, welcome, sir. You know, you heard Jonathan Hunt, you may have heard it. I mean, you got people crossing the border now that are not being deported, even though this 2,500 person thing has been violated. And Senator Paul, you know what the other thing is? A lot of people are saying all this is going to do, they're just trying to channel the illegals into the various ports of entry, you know, in Texas, Nogales, Arizona, San Diego, El Paso, Eagle Pass. That's all they're really trying to do. There's no significant change here. What are you thinking, Senator Paul?
I think what Biden has put forward is a complete farce. The Democrats believe in open borders. They've said it. They've explicitly said the birth rate is going down in America. We need to bring in more people who will vote Democrat, and that's why we're bringing in illegals, whether they come from the Middle East, whether they're terrorists, whether they've come from a prison. They frankly don't care.
I thought Rand Paul was a libertarian. I thought he was a moderate, but he's literally parroting Republican talking points. Yowza. And where are these claims by the Democratic Party that we need to bring in foreigners to vote Democrat? Because I don't know if you know this. Evidently, a United States senator from Kentucky doesn't know this. You have to be a citizen of the United States of America in order to vote in any election, never mind the federal election. And the naturalization process takes a while. In fact, how long does it take to become a citizen in the U.S.? On average, and this isn't from like, this is U.S. citizenship processing times from immigrationhelp.org. How long does it take for a green card holder to get citizenship? What is the fastest way to becoming a citizen of the United States? What are the 5 requirements, right? All of those responses are 5 years, but those with a U.S. spouse and a green card through marriage can apply after 3 years, known as the 3-year rule. On average, it takes 18 to 24 months to complete the naturalization process and become a U.S. citizen. The naturalization process has 5 general steps. So between the 2 years or the 5 years, depending on green card status or previous status, or if you're married to a citizen, or if you're in the military, which is a minimum, I believe that's a minimum 4-year commitment. I don't think you can do it with just a 2-year commitment. And 5 years of residency. Like, even if every single undocumented immigrant at the border came into the United States today, they could not be citizens for a minimum of 3 years if they were married to a U.S. citizen. Let's see what that 18-month thing is. Let's see. The first step in the naturalization process is completing and filing Form N-400. On average, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services will take over 14 months to process your form. It will take over 14 months for you to process the application. The exact time may vary. Before submitting your application, you should be sure to double-check all your answers. You must submit all application materials in English or a certified English translation. Then there's the biometrics appointment. Then there's the citizenship interview and test, which is another 4 months. And then the 120 days from the date of your interview to testify and notify that your decision is in writing. Then your oath of allegiance could take another 2 months. 2 years. Like, that's easily 2 years right there. And again, that's just an article. That's not even the Immigration Law Center. Where's the U.S. Department of Immigration? Would you please Citizenship Resource Center from UCIS itself. Immigrants who are interested in becoming U.S. citizens will find information about the naturalization process and study materials to prep, interview, and test. Well, that's great, but we want to see what it actually is. Free naturalization information sessions. Are you seriously telling me? Here we go. PDF. Are you eligible to apply for naturalization? From the Naturalization Office. You must be at least 18 years or older, a lawful permanent resident, and that means have a green card. Demonstrate continuous permanent residence in the United States for at least 5 years. Have been physically present in the United States for 30 months. Have lived for at least 3 months in the state or USCIS district where you claim residence. You could not simply open the border and let people, like, okay. Let's just for the sake of argument, are you eligible to vote? We'll type that in there. Are you eligible to vote with a green card in the U.S.? Let's just ask the question. Who can vote in U.S., federal, state, and local elections? If you are a U.S. citizen. Some areas, and very clearly some, allow non-citizens to vote in local elections only. You meet your state's residency requirements, are 18 years old on or before Election Day, are registered by your state's voter registration deadline. Who cannot vote? Non-citizens, including permanent legal residents. That is as blatantly stated as possible. This is just rhetoric. It's just rhetoric. And honestly, it took however long it took me to type and hit enter to figure that out. That's insane. So AZV, I just went over that. I think we're good on that. But you have to be a resident before you can apply. We went over that. Resident for 2 to 3 years, went over that. Can you go on a vacation to a different country during that time? That seems a little iffy, honestly. Oshun, you're saying yes once you're a legal resident. I would say if you're, it's that 30 consecutive, I mean, it's the consecutive months, honestly. Continuous permanent residence. Physically present for 30 months. It doesn't seem like the 30 months needs to be consecutive. But you had to have been a permanent resident for at least 5 years. So I would err on the side of caution. Ocean was married to a alien, so she would know. All right, Rand Paul, you're we're not giving that any airtime. Oh, let's do what all the other streamers do. Let's put Pierce Morgan on there.
What if you could
and
get
argue
on the ground floor
about
of
stuff?
Elon Musk?
Let's see.
We don't have a tradition of locking up the leading political candidate, no matter who that candidate is, or no matter what party they're part of. That's not part of our tradition. This is Stalinism.
I remember Donald Trump leading chants of lock her up about Hillary Clinton. Does that make him a Stalinist?
That there's a lot of nasty things that Hillary said about Trump, Trump said about Hillary. The actions of a major political movement in the country right now is to lock up the leading candidate for president 5 months before an election.
I hear you. Joe Biden is suffering some form of dementia.
I'd much rather the people around Biden making decisions than the sycophants Trump would put around him, which, with no offense at all, are sort of versions of Benny Johnson, by the way.
Just a personal recommendation from your boy Benny. Go to a country that's a Stalinist country, because that's clearly the tradition that you're from. You should go to Cuba. You should see what life's like there. North Korea would be fun.
I see.
Former President Donald Trump's bombshell guilty verdict is shaking up the race for the White House. Trump's campaign has raised tens of millions of dollars in an outpouring of popular support. But some polls show the public mood could be shifting against him. There are many unanswered questions. Could he go to jail? Was this equal justice or political persecution? Will the Republicans seek judicial revenge? And of course, can Trump still win in November? Well, joining me now to debate is the political commentator that Benny Show's Benny Johnson, host of the David Pakman Show, David Pakman, former Trump attorney and Harvard Law Professor Emeritus Alan Dershowitz, and the progressive activist Nomiki Constable. Welcome to all of you.
Whoa.
Alan Dershowitz, let me start with you.
What?
From a pure legal perspective.
Oh my goodness. Talk about a throwback. Nomiki Const, folks, she was the journalist that actually broke my DNC chair race to the world, and that's how I was able to actually get involved in the DNC chair race, because I had actually arrived in Arizona for the first debate, and I was denied because they said they didn't receive my request. And when I finally did get a hold of the secretary at the time, and I was like, no, I 100% did. Here's the receipts. They're like, well, sorry, we can't let you on the debate panel today. But now that we have had verbal communication, face-to-face meeting, we will ensure that you can make it onto the next one. And of course, there were those two meetings in between, those two events in between, where the notorious gotcha moment was the election rigged was asked, and everybody said, well, no, of course it wasn't. I would have been the only candidate that said, yes, absolutely it was, and here's the exact reasons why. Nomiki actually gave me a few minutes of interview time as her in her position as a correspondent for TYT. So, shout out to Nomiki. Thank you for your time back then. And I look forward to hearing what you have to say. We might actually get through this whole 30 minutes. I want to hear what she has to say.
Verdict.
Oh, I'm sorry. Before we get into that, excuse me if I'm wrong, but didn't Trump get convicted because he actually did something illegal? Not necessarily because the deep state is out to get him? Exactly. That he literally did something illegal. There was evidence to back it up for all 34 counts, because the counts were actually the evidence itself. This check with this number at this time and date was found to be a falsification of business filings, right? And it was. That's definitely how that went.
From 1 to 10, it was a below 20. It's the worst legal verdict I've seen in 60 years of practicing, writing, litigating cases. It's now days since the verdict. I still don't know what he was convicted of. Was he convicted of intent to cheat on?
See, I can't. I agree with Nomiki. What do you mean you don't know what he was convicted of? Read the verdict. In fact, some shameless self-promotion, I guess. Here is all 34 counts of the indictment. There you go, folks. Buddy, actually, would somebody send it to this guy so he can... These are all 34 counts of the indictment. All 34 counts. Please peruse after the stream, because, well, we're hearing it about this.
His taxes 2 years later, although he didn't take it as a deduction. Was he convicted of defrauding voters who obviously knew that he was a sexual scoundrel? Was he convicted of seeking to make an illegal campaign contribution, although the contribution didn't have to be listed until after the election? I have never seen a case where even after the verdict came down, we don't know what he was convicted of. No one in history has ever been convicted of failing to disclose.
I'm going to be petty, although I might have to sign in. Damn. That sucks. I messed up, guys. Because I don't think I can just simply go back. I am so sorry. I was going to be petty and copy and paste the link. And, oh, dang it. Hold on. We'll technical difficulties because I was trying to be petty. I'm very sorry about this. Let's see. What was it? Benny something? Benny show on Pierce Morgan, something like that. Yep, this is Stalinism. That was the one. All right. Again, I'm sorry. I was being petty. I shouldn't have been petty. I apologize. But I might have to figure out a way to link the screen.
How sound was this?
My bad. My bad.
From 1 to 10, non-crime really is.
And given what you said about less than -20 on the scale of sound judgment, how likely then is it that he will win on appeal?
He will lose on appeal in the appellate division of New York, which are Manhattan judges who have the same problem that jurors in Manhattan. They don't want to be pointed to, this is the man who allowed Trump to be president. So he will lose in the appellate division. He may well win the New York Court of Appeals, which reversed the Weinstein conviction on grounds similar to those grounds that would be alleged here. And if the Supreme Court were to take the case, he would almost definitely win in the Supreme Court because the instructions violate clear directives from the United States Supreme Court. But the question is, if he wins, will he win in time for the election? Remember, they rushed him to trial because, as Jack Smith said, the public has the right to know that he's a convicted felon before the election. The same public.
To be fair, and again, a broken clock is right twice a day, that argument of the fact that it happened during the election cycle and all that, and how it could be impacting things, I'm not going to agree about the rushing or anything like that. And that the American people deserve to know that he's a felon. I mean, we already know that he's a bad man, just like he also said, but that doesn't equal conspiracy. It just doesn't. And I think that's what his purpose is on this show, is to peddle the conspiracy element.
Has the right to
with
know
gravitas.
that conviction has been reversed, if it's going to be reversed, before the election. The tragedy would be if Trump were to lose the election, then win the appeal, then we would be back to where we are today. Election denial, half the country would be dissatisfied with the result. That's the worst possible result. Losing the election, winning the appeal, and the appeal is won after the election is over. So I hope we avoid it.
Okay. David Pakman, I saw you smirking quite a lot during what Alan was saying, but Alan, as he said, he's not a Trump supporter, and he is one of the most eminent lawyers in America. Does it not concern you that the glee?
Oh, are we trying to dox me? That's awesome. 816 North High Street. Head on over there, buddy. Head on over there. I encourage you to do that. But thanks for the follow. And because as long as you don't unfollow after the stream, we've hit our 160 follower goal. But all that to say,
that currently is spewing out from every Democrat pore might be tempered by a pretty hard reality shock if it plays out the way Alan suggests.
Well, I agree with much of what Alan is saying, and not all of it. He's a lawyer. I am not. And to some degree, I don't even know why I'm here, but we can discuss that part later.
Exactly.
But I think Trump's going to lose either way. And why do I think that? Because
why isn't Clarence Thomas being charged with literal corruption? Literally accepting bribes? Like, why are we not having this happen at all? I get that he's a Supreme Court justice, but that doesn't make him above the law. Anyway.
Republicans have lost everything since Trump won in 2016. 2018 was a disaster. Trump lost 2020. The red wave of 2022 led to Democrats getting a bigger majority in the Senate. The 2023 special off-year elections, every abortion-related referendum, it's been a disaster. So Trump's going to lose regardless. I don't know how much of an impact this verdict is going to have, but we know what he was found guilty of. You can say, well, I don't know that they should have brought the case. There is prosecutorial discretion. Hopefully we'll talk about that with regard to Hunter Biden as well. You can say the judge should have recused himself because he made a $35 donation to Act Blue. But to succeed on appeal, you have to point to something the judge actually did that's problematic. And the lawyers I've spoken to can't really point to anything. So I think Alan makes some good points. I just don't see this as the crazy controversy that some are making it out to be.
Well, let me explain why I think it might be. Is that I can just see how this plays out. Is that if Trump was to lose, last time in 2020, he went on a ridiculous...
Who wins in 2024? Billionaires. That's who wins in 2024. If Biden wins the election, we're going to get more of what we've already been getting. So skyrocketing profits for the wealthy, nothing being done about price gouging, nothing being done to hold banks accountable with their, I think, irresponsible interest rates against borrowers, which, like you and me. And again, he's giving the kid gloves to Israel, which means there's nothing being done to them or about their continued acts of violence. If Trump wins, we're either going to get exactly the same what we are getting now, or we're going to get a repeat of 2017 through 2020. And even then, that's still a best case scenario, because now he's on the coattails of the indictment and shaking his fist about persecuting his political rivals. So nobody wins if Trump or Biden ends up president. Granted, I don't know much about RFK Jr.'s policies. I don't think they're going to reverse any of the harm that has been done in the past 10 years. But Jill Stein would be ideal as a winning candidate, but I don't think she has the national name recognition or face recognition or any recognition by the average voter in America. So,
campaign of trying to say the election was stolen. He's never produced any evidence to corroborate that. Right. It was ludicrous. This time, he's going to have, and by the way, we have the backdrop of the Hunter Biden case going on, where the laptop story, which was suppressed by social media, let's not forget, which could have had a material impact on that election. That is all going to get reminded into people's heads that actually, that story was suppressed and shouldn't have been and could have had an impact. So you're going to have that as the backdrop for this.
Is this a moment of Piers Morgan being an actual journalist?
Which he often tends to be these days. And I'm not even sure he'll lose, by the way. But if he does, he's going to sit back and go, well, it was literally stolen by this ridiculous prosecution. And I've been asking Democrats the same thing the whole time, really, which is when you look at this in the round, you've got Bill Clinton, who, while he was president, had sex with an intern in the Oval Office. You've got Bill Clinton, who paid off Paula Jones $850,000 for settling a sexual harassment case. While he was president, it didn't happen while he was president, but he paid her off while he was. None of that led to a criminal prosecution. And I would think many Americans, if they're just out of the toxic tribal loop, would go, well, surely even the Paula Jones one sounds a lot worse than a consensual fling with Stormy Daniels 20 years ago. So they will see a double standard and they will shout a double standard, and Trump will martyr himself at the altar of double standard.
So that part is true, though. Again, I'm not saying don't persecute Clinton. Go for it. Unless that was Hillary Clinton right now, who followed me earlier with my address. I guess my days are numbered then, because I got on the Hillary watch. But yes, absolutely. Gendrick Bender. Hello. I hope I said that correctly. But you sound like an NOC. An NOC? An NPC. Okay. That's fair. Why do you think... No, actually, we were about to agree. I do think Trump is going to dominate the election cycle if he can still run, right? Assuming he can still run, despite these convictions and all this fun stuff, because there's another trial coming up at least, and he might be found guilty there too, and then we're going to have 2 trials that are going to be conspiracies. It's the fact that it's not about him as a candidate or him as a person or him and his values. It's him, the personality, the cult of personality. And he, as Pierce was just about to say, is that he's going to martyr himself, just like I said about Steve Bannon. They're going to martyr themselves. Like, look, they're coming after me. They're coming after me. They're trying to hold us down. What they do to me, they do unto you. And yes, that is going to carry a whole lot of steam leading into the general election. Will it carry him to the White House again? Who's to say, but it is possible. Oh, okay. Well, I guess we have ourselves another troll. I thought you were just a Trump supporter, but, I mean, Trump is a god? Come on now. So. Anyway, that was fun.
I would say, a really compelling case. where a lot of people who didn't agree with him about 2020 being nicked are now going to look at him and go, he's got a point.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what, though? That's 2 trolls and someone attempting to dox me in one stream on a Thursday. That's pretty impressive. I think maybe I'm doing this thing right. That's awesome.
The flaw is that there was nothing illegal about Bill Clinton settling that lawsuit, and they were not campaign contributions disguised in this way, which was determined to be criminal. I think Trump will make himself a martyr either way. He's a victim of the system of elections being rigged. He's a victim of the justice system being rigged. He's a victim of the media rigging his microphone and the temperature in the debates. He's always going to be a victim of everything. Yeah. They've lost everything since 2016, Piers. Of course he's going to be the victim because he can't just admit, for the last 8 years, I've destroyed this
President Trump was just convicted.
And then we get a Trump commercial. That's funny. That's funny.
Lost everything since I became.
Honestly, if I was a Hasanabi level streamer and I had like a whole moderation team, they couldn't have planned that any better than if that had happened on its own. That was funny. I thought he was being sarcastic. Maybe he was. No. He came into the chat calling me an NPC and immediately said the trial is a fraud. Trump will dominate. The judge is corrupt. Trump is a god. That's trolling 101. And we don't feed trolls here. You can feed the dragon with channel points, actually. It used to just be bits, but now it's actually channel points as well.
Let him lose legitimately.
Well, that's what I was about to say, actually. I was about to say, in that case, if it's so inevitable he's going to lose, why go down this route of really overinflating a state misdemeanor about a fling 20 years ago and then a bit of paper?
What? This isn't about what happened 20 years ago. All of the 34 counts of the indictment. Let me share it again. All 34 counts of the indictment were from 2017 through 2018. This has nothing to do with what happened years and years and years ago. This is what happened in 2017 and 2018 during his administration. Like, are you kidding me?
Shuffling. Why do that with all the potential fallout and blow?
To Ashun's point, AZV, it's not just the Trump supporters who act like that. It's also the vote blue no matter who crowd. And to a greater or lesser degree, the Green Party and the greater or lesser degree, the Libertarian Party, they also get super toxic. American politics is theater, and I am trying to not participate in that theater to the best of my ability. I'm trying to give facts. I'm trying to give information. I'm trying to have an actual correspondence and reaction to as I see it, right? I could be, oh my God, Pierce, are you stupid? Oh my God, you're so dumb, you British moron. But that's no.
Go back. You've already seen Trump's raised $200 million since these verdicts came in. That can only help him. I just don't understand why Democrats would do that. Now, Benny, let me bring you in here. There is a but here. Yes, he's raising a ton of money, but also I saw a poll in Reuters saying that 10% of registered Republicans are less inclined now to vote for him. 25% of independents indicating they might be less inclined to vote for him. Now, it's the first poll really that's shown that. But if that starts to be a trend, and that is the effect of this conviction, that's going to be a problem for Trump.
Yeah, I think there's a much bigger problem at play right now, Piers, and I'd really like to clear the table here as we have this conversation, because we need to actually talk about what's happening, because what's happening here is not normal.
The Trump supporter with the Trump, oh my God.
In this country, we don't have a tradition of locking up the leading political candidate 5 months before the election, no matter who that candidate is or no matter what party.
By the way, Dershowitz is on the Epstein list. I don't know how he is still being invited on TV shows. So that's interesting, because I know there were some names that were revealed on the Epstein list. Obviously, Trump, several presidents, and all that fun stuff. Dershowitz, apparently being one of them. So how many of the names have been made public record? I would be very curious.
They're part of. Not if you're a Republican, not if you're a Democrat, not if you're Green Party or Libertarian. Doesn't matter. That's not part of our tradition. That's not normal. We need to establish that. There is a tradition, however, that my fellow panelists may be part of, and that's called being a Stalinist. If you like this kind of thing, you're a Stalinist. You're a show me the man, I'll show you the crime kind of sycophant, psychotic, dictatorial tyrant.
So AZV, do you hear this gentleman speaking right now? That right there is American politics. And I won't even say it's limited to the right, because again, the left will make sensational arguments and comparisons like that too, which is why Nomiki and all the others laughed so hard, because this isn't about making a point. It isn't even about being right or wrong. He wants the clicks. He wants the attention. He wants to generate entertainment and an environment. That is what he is doing. And that is the dominant factor of American politics. And it's disturbing.
And this is the type of nature that has overtaken what used to be called the Democratic Party. Alan Dershowitz is part of it. This is Stalinism. Say it and mean it. And there's some bravery to actually admitting that you're a Stalinist. Hold on. There's bravery to admitting that you're a Stalinist.
By the way, just for the sake of argument, right? Remember that other document I told us about, the Overton window, right? Stalinism is mentioned in here. Let me find it. Pre-Bolshevik Soviet Russia. And I believe it was Stalin, right? Wasn't that during the Soviet Russia? Or are we talking about the USSR? Most of the pre-modern world and USSR. Stalin, I believe, Stalin was USSR, right? So, was a Soviet politician, revolutionary. He was the longest-serving leader of the Soviet Union from 1924. So, when was the Bolshevik Revolution? That was in 1917. So 7 years later, Stalin. So it went from the far left, the Bolshevik Revolution, rule by worker councils, direct democracy, to rule by autocratic totalitarianism. 7 years later, the USSR. That's wild, and that's what he's accusing everybody on the panel of.
You're evil. You're an evil person.
This is your argument?
Right?
Great job. If this is your argument, you're really going to win, buddy.
Hold on. You don't care about what's true. You just care about maintaining power. And that's, I mean, it's a brave thing to admit that. I think it's morally repugnant. I think most people believe that. But you would be the same type of person who'd be celebrating in the street when Nelson Mandela got locked up. You're the same person who'd be applauding when they put Gandhi in prison. You're the same person who would be proud that MLK...
Honestly, if you had to ask me one reason why I don't subscribe to like conservative ideology on this level, right? That's why. That is such a turnoff. Like, at least Piers Morgan sounds intelligent from time to time, and it sounds reasonable what he says. But between this guy and Ben Shapiro and Andrew Tate and Tucker Carlson, like, why would you even want to associate yourself with that kind of behavior and just sensational rhetoric? And he's comparing Trump to Mandela and Gandhi, exactly. To be fair, historically, Gandhi was not a good person. Chances are he was a pedophile, among other things. But still, a symbol of peace throughout all of history. Same thing with Mandela. A symbol of peace. What?
Went to jail 27 different times.
Minor drug offenders. You're from the party that prosecutes.
Hold on.
Let Benny finish, then I'll bring you in a minute.
Let Benny finish. Why would you give him...
I will not interrupt you. Do not interrupt me. As long as the person stands against your power, you are the kind of succubus, sycophants for power, simps for power, who always coddle the Stalinist mantra, do anything, lock up anyone, and you'd be gathering firewood for Joan of Arc bonfires.
I've got one. Okay, Benny, I have one more question for you, Benny, before I get into Mickey. It's this. I remember Donald Trump leading chants of lock her up about Hillary Clinton. Does that make him a Stalinist?
So did that happen is the question.
Yeah. He would be at rallies.
Yes.
He'd be...
What? Oh my God. Oh. This is why we don't feed the trolls, right? And we don't actually let these kinds of people have platforms on other people's channels. Because this isn't even debate. This isn't even rhetoric at this point. This is just literally generating theater to push an agenda. That's it. That's all it is. It's propaganda might be the best word for it.
At rallies and say things like, hang on.
Hillary.
My turn to say hang on. My turn to say hang on. My turn to.
What's the point of a conversation when you're just ignoring your opposition's argument? He doesn't even address the legality of the conviction, and he's not even addressing the topic at hand. He's not answering the question. He's just making counter arguments. He's being contrarian, and that apparently makes you an intellectual in conservative circles. If you're white, sound like have a good voice, and you can speak forcefully, that makes you a superpower in debate.
I love you, buddy. But we have free speech in this country. Video footage. There's a lot of nasty things that have been said about.
A lot of nasty
things that Hillary said about Trump. Trump said about Hillary. Let's look at actions. I'm old enough now that I just don't care about your words. I care about your actions. The actions of a major political movement.
The actions of Trump was to chant "lock her up" and to mock disabled people and to steal from veterans organizations that he held fundraisers for, and to be racist and to be discriminatory, to threaten political opponents. And he has even been recently recorded saying that we need to get rid of the Constitution. Those are actions, buddy.
In the country right now is to lock up the leading candidate for president 5 months before an election. He's 77 years old, Piers. He's been around for a long time. He's never faced a criminal charge.
I know.
Never been found guilty of anything in 77 years of public life.
I've got to jump in.
And now they lock him up. That's called Stalinism.
Benny, I don't disagree with you, but I do want to play a clip because Trump has denied ever saying lock her up about Hillary. Here's a clip.
Thank you, Piers.
Crooked, you should lock her up, I'll tell you.
For what she's done, they should lock her up.
Lock her up is right.
Lock up the Bidens. Lock up Hillary.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Yeah, because you'd be in jail.
Now, by your yardstick, Benny, that makes him leading Stalinist, doesn't it?
No, because I judge a man. I'm judge a man by his actions. Like,
okay, AZV, you keep asking, like, is this really how American politics operates? And I'm sorry. And in fact, it makes me angry because this is how politics operates. This is how a lot of political discussions devolve. You literally showed evidence that this is the thing that happened as a counterpoint to the point that they were making, which is that calling for the arrest or going after your political opponent is Stalinism. He was literally shown evidence, proof, action that this is what his candidate did, and he's like, that's different. It is suppression. It's also violating the First Amendment.
Did he act on that? Did Donald Trump lay a finger on Hillary Clinton? Did anyone direct any special counsel to ever look into Hillary Clinton?
Yes! Yes, they did! Hillary went through, an 11-hour hearing? Granted, it wasn't Trump leading it, but it was because of the accusations Trump made, and the Republican Party thinking, hey, this might be a good way to get our boy into the White House.
Sure, that's called freedom of speech. This is called playing politics. A lot of people say a lot of things in politics. Joe Biden just explained that his uncle was eaten by cannibals.
Okay. I do want to bring in.
A lot of people say a lot of things. That's called freedom of speech.
I want to bring in Namiki, but let me go to Alan quickly. You want to say something, Alan?
There was a special counsel on Hillary Clinton. The Whitewater Council was directed against Hillary Clinton. And yes, there were many actions taken against Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton. Don't overuse the term Stalinist. Reserve that term for people who really want to put people in the gulag, want to execute them. Don't become a Stalinist denier, like a Holocaust denier. What Stalin did was worse. I'm not on the side of who are trying to get Trump, but I would never call them Stalin based on that action alone.
Okay, let me bring in Namiki. You've been waiting very patiently. A lot of facial expressions from you suggesting you don't think this is a reasonable argument. Do you feel comfortable about the fact that that any American president, but happens to be Trump, becomes the first one to be dragged through a criminal court on something so comparatively trivial? Had it been one of the other three cases,
34 counts is not trivial
about it, but they chose the most trivial one. They upgraded a real misdemeanor offense to a felony so they could basically try and nail him. Do you feel comfortable that the legal system's being weaponized in that way?
Well, I think what's interesting about this case is it's not just that it was a misdemeanor, a traditional misdemeanor for falsifying documents. It's that it was falsifying documents in relation to an election. And so just like they're going after people for sending out robocalls that were AI saying a different election date or different vote for a different candidate or whatever, that's interfering with an election. And that is a very serious crime, especially when you're running for the president of the free world.
Not in America. No, that's par for the course now. That is just par for the course. And Joe Biden also suffers. He has good days and bad days. Let's just keep it at that. Some of the things he says and references is just off the wall. But according to his doctors, he doesn't have dementia.
Now, if we want to talk about weaponization of the legal system, Mr. Dershowitz, hang on a second. We want to talk about, weaponization of the legal system. Just this week, you have Steve Bannon, Stephen Miller, Lara Loomer saying, we should be going after everybody and giving them the death sentence. Steve Bannon saying Republicans should be using every single option on the table to investigate, to subpoena, to go after Democrats or anybody who stands in the way of Donald Trump.
But that's my point, Namiki, because of course they're going to. And once one party does this, the other party will now spend all its time, effort, and money trying to return the favor. And the loser actually is America and is standing in the world. And the
thank
American
you for admitting that,
who have elected these people to do a job for them, and all they're trying to do is.
This finance prodigy.
How many more ads are there going to be in this thing? Jesus.
But in prison, I think it's damaging to America.
I agree with you. I think it's damaging to America that Donald Trump has been on a mission to deconstruct any sort of institutions that keep our democracy alive. I think it's damaging to America that he played these games and he was giving money back and forth to different lawyers and different folks and paying off folks to do his dirty work. It's damaging to America that he does not respect the institution and the system that gets people elected. So yes, are Democrats supposed to sit back and let him play games with our democratic institutions? Of course not. He wants to dismantle NATO.
You're wrong.
Alan?
You're wrong about what he was convicted of. If the judge had instructed, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, to convict him, you have to conclude beyond reasonable doubt that he intended to impact the election. You would be right. But he didn't do that. He gave them multiple choice. He said, well, maybe he did that in order to save on taxes. Maybe he did that for this reason, that reason. We multiple choice. We don't know that this is an election case.
That will be brought up at the appeals, and that is the one argument that the Trump team is going to put forward, and it may impact sentencing, as you mentioned. But that does not mean that it is a winning argument. Great argument, the one argument he has. But again, we're looking for loopholes in something that appears on the surface very.
Okay, honestly. I know it sounds like I'm fangirling for Nomiki, but she's been a tough cookie ever since I encountered her. And I don't know why she isn't in more of these panels. And I hate to say it like this, I have not seen Nomiki, and honestly forgot about her until I saw her right there and she was introduced. So like, where has she gone? Like, what is she up to? And why is she not being invited to more of these? Because she does her job well. She gets the facts. She does her due diligence. And whether she agrees with it or not, she will come down with righteous fury, as we are seeing. And she does it. Again, I don't know. But this guy right here, I don't know if my mouse is actually on the screen, but I'm the Dershowitz, like, he's just trying to make asinine arguments. As far as I watched the Trump trial and the conviction and the following out, and the instructions were clear. So I'm not sure where these arguments are coming from, but let's, I guess, continue on.
He did this, and that does not look good to the American people. It might chin up his base. Hang on, Benny. It might chin up his base. I gave you guys time. Let me just say one thing. It might chin up his base, and his base is dangerous, but they were always going to be ginned up. It's that portion of America, these little margins that we're winning by now, feels like this is a disgusting action, whether it's one case, two cases, three cases. That jury found 34 counts him guilty, and that jury had lawyers on it, people who voted for Trump. So clearly, they made a strong case, Mr. Dershowitz. You cannot deny that.
Hook, line, sinker. I mean, granted, it's not like nobody else has been saying the same thing. She just happens to have a little bit more information or a better way of phrasing it than most, myself included. And it's ridiculous because, again, you can literally fact check this in real time, and the fact that it's not happening is kind of ridiculous. And then we have these panelists, not this one, but there was a previous panelist with Piers Morgan where they were basically all spinning right round, tooting Trump's horn. And it's like they are trying to reach so deeply to exonerate Trump while he is very clearly being found guilty. And you're right. This is a very low barrier of criminality that he was found guilty of, but he was still found guilty of it. Granted, he should be found guilty of more things that are actually substantive, because he committed those crimes as well. Am I going to sit here and slander the man? No. But he advocated for kids in cages. His immigration policy harmed families, harmed children, harmed lives, harmed innocent people. His rhetoric got people killed. His actions caused major civil unrest. However you want to look at it, the man is guilty of significantly worse. Agreed. But this is what they found him guilty on.
No, I can deny that, and I will deny it. Let me give you another argument. So the prosecution argued that it was, as a matter of fact, an illegal campaign contribution. As a matter of fact, they had a witness, Trump, who is the FEC expert, who said, I will testify as a matter of fact that it was not a campaign violation. And it's done all the time. That nobody has ever been prosecuted for it. It was perfectly legal. And the judge kept that out. The judge denied the jury the right to hear from the expert that it wasn't an illegal campaign contribution, because the prosecution argued, yes, as a matter of fact, it was.
So are we arguing that it's only 33 counts found guilty?
I mean, I could go down 30 reversible errors. I've never seen a case.
Well, maybe you should work for Trump again. He needs your help. He has an appeal coming up. These are great arguments back, but it didn't hold up last week. And that's the point.
Let's agree to have the appeal decided before the election, and then I'll shut up.
You know what? I think actually, let me bring in. All right, let me bring in David. I do think that's an interesting point that's been raised by various members of the panel. Is that actually, wouldn't it be fair to have that appeal before the election?
Yes.
I think it'd be completely fair. I would have no problem with that. I'd love to have it all wrapped up. It seems unlikely that that's going to happen, and I have very little control over it. Me saying I would like me agreeing to it really does nothing. What I do think is interesting is that there's so much moving of the goalposts here in every case. Your other guest here, Mr. Johnson, whose work I'm not as familiar with as I would like to be, but he seems extremely high energy. He comes out shot out of a cannon saying Stalinist this and that, and nobody else was saying lock up. And then you play the montage of here's 6 times Trump said it, and he goes, well, he didn't act on it all of a sudden. He changes his own argument as they always do in every single one of these cases. Whatever they can get away with, you get.
This is my favorite multi-toolkit so far. Whenever I need to unscrew
it, peers, and then they go, oh, but my argument's actually something different. That's the sort of fundamental nature of this, and it's pathetic.
All right, Benny, I want to play you a clip. Benny, before you reply, I want to play you a clip of Kamala Harris on Jimmy Kimmel last night.
Let's think about this. A jury of 12 people, peers, over the course of 6 weeks, deliberated on the evidence and facts and unanimously determined guilt for 34 felony counts. There was a defense attorney who actively participated in selecting that jury, who actively made decisions about witnesses to call, witnesses to cross-examine, and the jury made their decision. And, you know, I think that the reality is cheaters don't like getting caught.
So, snark aside, the jury system has also been used to prevent justice from happening too. Let's be clear. There were mixed jury members that were pro-Trump, anti-Trump, right? So, and she's right. There was all sorts of evidence, cross-examination, witnesses, and whatever else, right? And the jury of the peers still found Trump guilty. Interestingly enough, though, in most sexual assault and rape cases, the jury of peers can never consist of women. Why? Because an overwhelming number of women, if not 100% of women, have experienced sexual assault or worse in their lifetime. And so they cannot be unbiased on that panel and that jury. And so you do see the criminal justice system be imbalanced, and you do see the lack of justice happen in different criminal cases. So again, to argue that it's not fair or that, you know, this, that, or the other happened or that it's a conspiracy is blatantly false, because justice is almost rarely served against white-collar criminals or people of any sort of status or power, never mind in various criminal cases in general.
And being held accountable.
Benny, your reaction to that?
No, I don't know if Kamala Harris is talking about her personal life there and her history, her long history in the California political system. Cheaters don't like getting caught. She would definitely know how to rig a jury, considering what she did as a California attorney.
That's what I'm saying. But the Me Too movement was pretty eye-opening that a vast majority of women do face that. So to your point, it's probably not 100%, but it is significantly more than half. And that was the kind of point that I was trying to make.
General, but I'll say this when it comes to cheating, and this is very interesting. She says, cheaters don't like getting caught. So here's my question to my fellow panelists here, and I ask it respectfully, and I hope that we don't interrupt each other. I love the vibrant conversation and debate on this program.
He's doing more interrupting than
Joe Biden cheating or engaging in interfering in an election when he sicked the current Secretary of State, his name's Antony Blinken, on rounding up members of the intel community to declare that his son's laptop, which is 100% real and holds within it at least 400 federal crimes, was actually fake and Russian disinformation. Now, that happened right before an election.
It did.
Far closer to an election.
Right. Let's just start off with he wasn't the president.
And most importantly,
I'm not even going to get
Donald
to your
Trump
argument.
wasn't a president. Please let me finish. Donald Trump wasn't a president when allegedly this payment happened.
You're right. He was cheating. Joe cheated. You're right. So
is Joe Biden cheating? So because yesterday, just really quick, because something remarkable happened in Delaware. The federal government introduced Hunter Biden's laptop against him as a piece of evidence that they have confirmed beyond a shadow of a doubt is Hunter Biden's. So Joe Biden knew he was
they're
lying.
treating both sides equally. That is the point. You're saying that he's a victim, Donald Trump's the victim, and they don't go after the Democrats. But now you gave yourself an example of how the federal government, the justice system under Joe Biden, is going after.
So should Joe Biden be charged? So Joe Biden be charged for the same
he didn't
thing?
have
Because
it was his son. That's the
guy who
difference.
did it is Secretary of State right now. The guy who.
See, and this is, again, that disingenuous kind of nonsense. Like, you're trying, like, Hunter Biden is the one that committed the criminal act. And now he's trying to say, well, shouldn't that include them because the president is his father and this, that, and the other reason? And if you raise the power of two to fish, then clearly the entire administration should be charged with, whatever conspiratorial nonsense he's about to spout. What? And Joe Biden can't be charged because he was ruled mentally incompetent by his own DOJ, which is even more concerning because he's still the president.
Organized
this just
the
keeps
Russian
getting better and
disinformation
better.
letter is the Secretary of State. The people who signed that letter, there have been zero consequences. They knew they were lying to the American people. They were rigging an election.
But can you admit that now they're going after both sides equally? You said just a few minutes ago, oh, Donald Trump, the Republicans, they're always being prosecuted. They're Stalinists. But here's an example of the Biden justice system going after his own son. Can you admit that this justice system is treating both sides equally?
Not so clear. Not so clear. They're trying him in Delaware, where he has all the tremendous advantages, and they tried Trump in New York, where he had all the disadvantages. We'll see what the outcome of the case is.
Also, where they were based.
Okay, let me ask David a question. This is about the Wall Street Journal big report today about Joe Biden's cognitive decline. They spoke with 45 Republican and Democratic lawmakers and staffers. It was pretty unsettling reading, I have to say. It seemed pretty clear by the time I finished it that Joe Biden is suffering some form of dementia. That was the clear conclusion.
Oh, cool, because I was trying to be polite about it.
To suggest that may be the case. How comfortable are you that he is going to be fighting this election and potentially being president for 4 more years?
Well, worst case scenario, they both are struggling cognitively, in which case I'd much rather the people around Biden making decisions than the sycophants Trump would put around him, which, with no offense.
So why can't Democrats run a different candidate? Do they have to stick with him since he won in 2020, or can they change him? That is a fantastic question. Can the Democrats choose another candidate? Yes. Yes, they can. Will they? No, they won't. Because historically, the DNC does whatever the DNC wants. And typically, that is to make a one-term president a two-term president. Secondly, there isn't a strong enough Democrat to really run against Joe Biden. That wasn't Bernie Sanders, but he's not a Democrat. Other than Joe Biden, there aren't any Democratic heavyweights that could have conceivably ran for office. Maybe Elizabeth Warren, maybe Sherrod Brown, but do they still have aspirations of the White House? So you get into a whole lot of other politics, but fundamentally, to answer your question, the answer is yes, they can, and yes, they should have, but they didn't. And that is one of the reasons why I ran for DNC chair back in 2017, was because they did rig the elections. They did disregard the needs of the voting base in rural America and in red states, and that they just don't care about the regular people. And then in 2017, they also argued in court that it doesn't matter what the people think, or if they even vote in the primaries. The Democratic Party is a private organization that has the right to select their own candidates under their own criteria, irrespective of the votes from the voters, and that the voters should not have had any expectations otherwise. That is the corruption of the Democratic Party. Yes, my throat's getting a little rough here. We never did end up taking a break, but we only got 30 minutes left. So, the other thing, too, is with Biden's decline, that should make him incapable of running for office again. Same thing with Trump. He has some cognitive deficiencies as well. You mean to tell me that because they pay off their doctors to say, yep, they can still run for office, that's acceptable? We're about to get into that, is that that article that was written shows that Biden's cognitive decline is in its ongoing stages. That should be immediate grounds from prevention of running for office, let alone for the presidency. Has it happened in the past when a party has changed its candidate while the current candidate has won the last election? Yes. I believe that was Jimmy Carter. And then it's not often, but I think Jimmy Carter was one of them.
At all are sort of versions of Benny Johnson, by the way. And the audience, I'm sure we could have a beer together, Benny, and have a great time, but it's not like I necessarily want the government run by people like you. So I think worst case scenario, they're both struggling. You know, at this point, I've interviewed 4 medical and mental health professionals, 2 from mental health, 2 from the neurology side. So far, they've all told me Joe Biden is experiencing age-related aging that you would expect for someone of his age. Trump seems to be seriously cognitively struggling, where he doesn't realize he's saying things that don't make sense. He doesn't realize that he's getting names completely wrong, stories that don't make sense, doesn't know who he ran against, doesn't know who he's running against, doesn't know who he ran against in 2016 or who's president right now. I mean, a level of confusion. And again, I'm neither a neurologist nor a mental health expert. This is what the mental health experts have told me. Now, I will say, I read the article. Some of the sourcing is people that MAGA Mike Johnson talked to. That's not super compelling to me. However, I do think Annie Linsky is a trustworthy reporter. I am not pretending this story isn't out there, and I cover it on my show today. I think it's a serious story.
If Donald Trump came out and said that his great uncle had been shot down and then eaten by cannibals, and it turned out that he hadn't been shot down or eaten by cannibals, you would probably lead a cry of, this man is not fit to be president, wouldn't you?
Yeah, maybe I would. I mean, Trump has made stuff up about his uncle developing nuclear weapons or something just as ridiculous. And so I think we have examples of both. I don't know that they're super compelling one way or the other.
Okay.
By the vice president
Alan?
Here, that's why.
Since then, the Dem Party has been saying that we are not allowed to primary incumbents because then we make them weak for the general election. That was an argument that they made in 2016 regardless. I was actually going to run for Congress instead. But I was told we already have a candidate and we don't want to waste money in the primaries because it's a tough primary area, I was like, fine, I'll run for state rep then. Cool. And I did, and I still lost, of course, because the Democrats did not care about red districts at all. No support, not money, not people, nothing. Which is the reason why I ran for DNC chair, to address that concern and then to address the impropriety of the Democratic primary election between Hillary and Bernie. Wrapping this guy up.
Than in any election since Franklin Roosevelt in 1944, because whoever is the vice president will be the next president.
Right.
And if I were the Republicans, I'd put up the strongest, most presidential person, Nikki Haley, for example, or somebody like that, to run against Kamala. If Trump tends to pick somebody just who is somebody helping get president, helping get elected, but would be a good president, that would be a terrible mistake. This is a race for who's going to be the next president, not only who's going to be president.
Okay. Benny, I want to give you the last word because Sienna Miller, the actress, has said she has already fled the United States, partly due to avoid Donald Trump. She said, I'm living in New York for 7 years till last summer. It was time to come home. Obviously got a little baby. It's a better quality of life. And there is no Donald Trump. I couldn't handle another election. We are, I think, heading to that familiar rodeo of a lot of famous people saying they're either leaving or have left the country to avoid Trump. What do you make of this?
Good. Fantastic. Why not? We live in a free country. Go where you please. But if just a personal, humble recommendation.
I called the Dem Party in 2008 about running for Congress in my district in Georgia in the next election cycle in 2010. Since my awful GOP rep ran unopposed, they said the same. They didn't want to waste money on my district. They said that to you. Oh my God. That's blatant. David Pakman made his audience with progressive stances, and now he's pro-Israel and calling people who criticizes Israel as far left. Weasel. You know what? I have no idea who that guy is, honestly. And he didn't seem to be The only thing I got from him from this interview is that he's anti-Trump. But I will take you at your word. I will freely admit that I got all of my policy, all of my beliefs, all of my political leanings from research. I literally looked at what is wrong with the economy. This is what's wrong with the economy. This is how we should fix it. Okay, let's learn about our healthcare system. Okay, I already don't like insurance. I think that's stupid. Great, cool. What is it actually costing us? Holy Christ, that is insane. What about the costs of care? Oh my God, it's different everywhere else in the country and not standardized anywhere. You go into the military, you go into gun rights, you go into labor reform, you go into the tax code, you go into everything else, and it's like, why is everything such a dumpster fire? That's how I got my political agenda. You can look at that at www.samronan.com/issues. I encourage you to check those issues out and then challenge me on them on stream. By all means, please do. Why do I bring all that up? I have no idea who Benny is. I only know who Namiki is because I personally met her. I never watched the Young Turks. I never watched Jimmy Dore. I never heard of David Pakman before today. I only know Piers Morgan was a correspondent because he used to be in the news, but clearly he's what he is now. And in general, all of these YouTubers, I would never have heard of Hasanabi. I would have never heard of literally who's currently streaming right now. I'm sure there's some Anna Kasparian, wouldn't have known her. Temple Taps, no idea who they are. Jay Marine, no idea who she is. David Tovarish, Carleus, Relevant, Chud Logic. None of these people. Never heard of them. Never watched them. I have never felt the need to get my opinions from other people in that sense. Certainly not content creators, certainly not people who have engaged in the legislative process, who haven't ran for office, who have not filed for candidacy, who have not worked on a campaign, and who have not been any part of all that. And that's my point. I don't know any of these creators. I don't know any of the streamers. I did the work myself. I learned through the unfortunate school of hard knocks how to get elected, how to get on the ballot, how to run a campaign by struggling and failing to do so on 2 different occasions. I got 20% of the vote for my congressional race, and I got 20,000 votes in my state representative race. So I did some things right. Just I didn't have a $1 million war chest during my congressional race, and I was up against a homegrown town favorite during my state representative race. So to answer your question, who do I know? The people that I've ran into during my time, I've personally met Tom Perez and Keith Ellison. I debated them in CNN, and I held my own. And to certain polls, I won. I won those debates on the Democratic Future Forums. So again, I did my research. I did not rely on other people telling me what to believe. I researched and had the fortune of being able to express that research, being able to talk to other, talking to voters, talking to constituencies, and asking them about their opinions and being able to redirect their concerns with my policies. So I hope that doesn't sound arrogant or cocky. It means I have not been exposed to this part of the internet. I have not. And my stream is intended to be informative. It is intended to be educational. I don't expect you to take me at my word. I don't want you to take me at my word. That's one of the reasons why I do live stream fact checks. That's one of the reasons why I will literally type it out and share the information and read it off of the article or put it up on the screen to watch the video. Because I don't want you to take my word for it. I could be very well wrong. I'm not a subject matter expert on everything. I am a subject matter on the things that I am a subject matter on. And I'm very confident on my policy stances and platform and issues. But there's always room for growth and improvement. So to that point, yes, you did win those debates hands down. I used to watch a lot of YouTubers as news sources, but most of them have become either too establishment or grifters. And that is what I ran into post DNC chair election. I got invited to a lot of different circles. I got invited to a lot of different organizations, And I found out the hard way that the internet is a tough, harsh place, and it's mostly cults of personality revolving around an individual, whether that's the Real Progressives, whether that's MMT, whether that's the Green Party, whether that's Jimmy Dore's group, and all these other things. It just ends up being a cult of personality, to include TYT and all these others, right? And that's why Nomiki ended up leaving TYT, because she didn't want to be a part of the cult. And it's probably why I haven't seen or heard anything of her, because she's probably doing the real work. And it's being either drowned out or not in the social media circles that I follow. Maybe, I don't know. But again, the social media circles that I follow is just really just trying to pick up on current events and, trying to sift through the noise of whatever current event is. I try to stick to our regular news sources. I will try, if it's a headline, I will make sure that it's on conservative and liberal and fairly neutral news sources, so that I can at least be like, okay, this is in fact something that is happening, and it's not just Fox News trying to sensationalize something, or MSNBC. So that is the point of my channel, and it's one of the reasons why I ensured that there are panels on my About Me section that help you engage with your electoral processes, right? How to find your reps and how to communicate with them. I'm also developing Coursera courses that will be free, that will be obviously a little bit more in depth, and that I hope will be used as tools to help facilitate a popular movement in our country, to eventually lead to this. But even if I'm not the one that's in this chair, as long as somebody who gives a damn about the people of this country and has the spinal fortitude to hold the Trumps, the Clintons, and the power structures accountable, I don't really care who sits in this office.
From your boy Benny, go to a country that's a Stalinist country.
This guy
because
and
that's
his
clearly
Stalinism.
the tradition that you're from. You should go to Cuba. I've gone to Cuba and done documentaries. You should see what life's like there. North Korea would be fun.
You mean they have
Perhaps
universal
you could
healthcare, right?
Fly into mainland China and try and live under a social credit system.
Who do you think
See
is
how
funding
much
Trump's
your
election?
activism. See how much your activism gets you. How far your radical intersectional feminist ideologies get you in, I don't know, the Mideast or in an African nation. Try it. Go. I beg of you. And more importantly, make sure you book a one-way ticket. Make sure you book a one-way ticket.
Pays you well.
You don't want any. You don't want to, get
the defense
temptation
that you
to come
have
back.
for Donald Trump and anything to the left of Donald Trump, including Nikki Haley, is a Stalinist. So, wait till you learn how much of a
I would never call people like Alan Dershowitz a Stalinist.
For 8 years, they're desperate. It's been 8 years since
This is
they
great.
won
Keep
anything.
talking
They're
like this.
terrified. They're desperate.
So now it's just evolving into chaos. So this was the conservative panel. Democracy Now!
This news is funded
very
by
much
viewers
so
like
on the
you.
left.
Please support our work at democracynow.org/give. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
Myth. The
In
legend.
Gaza, an Israeli attack on an UNRWA school and shelter has killed at least 40 Palestinians overnight, including 14 children in the Nusayrat refugee camp. Dozens of people were injured in the attack. The school was being used
we
to
covered
house
this earlier in the
displaced
stream. Does she
Palestinians.
cover anything
One
else
survivor
today?
said he'd sought refuge at the school after being displaced first from Gaza City, then Khan Yunis, and then Rafah. Survivors describe the school as being shelled with a belt of fire.
I don't want to end on this much fury. This will make me angry, and I don't want to end on an angry note. AOC Bernie lead backlash to Netanyahu address. It's still a conservative thing. Indian elections with John Oliver. That could be... I mean, it has nothing to do with American politics. That could be a little lighthearted. Tulsi Gabbard, yikes. She's been a bad actor for quite some time. Her pronunciation is pretty good. Excellent. I want to end this not on a light topic, but not necessarily rehashing a topic we've already covered. So Tulsi is a huge disappointment. I actually was a pretty strong supporter of hers for a while there until she basically took the side of Israel, and that's pretty much when it all went downhill. I guess we can watch this.
In many ways, I love $29.
Yikes.
Progressive Democrats pressing against the invitation for Israeli
okay,
Prime
good.
Netanyahu.
This is something that we can discuss probably in the next 20 minutes, too. Why is America inviting Netanyahu to speak in front of Congress during one of the worst human rights atrocities in human history, but certainly in modern times? I get that Netanyahu has came to America and addressed Congress in the past, but now is not a good time for this. Now is the worst time for this. And secondly, the argument is that we just need to hear it from himself on our soil so that we can understand why he's doing what he's doing in Palestine, when he's saying it on his own media networks on repeat. He's not backing down. He wants to erase Palestine. So let's hear this.
To address Congress, they don't want that to happen. They are members of the radical left.
The radical
left. And they
left.
continue to be loud. Speaking out, Congressman Greg Caesar says, I don't think it's a good time for him to be coming.
It isn't.
Are we hanging on his opinion? I don't know. Here's another one. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley told Fox, we should not be creating a platform and welcoming an accused war criminal.
Which is also true.
Stop there.
Honor a foreign leader by addressing a joint session of Congress who is currently engaged in creating the worst humanitarian disaster in the modern history of this country.
I swear to you, I did not watch this first. I don't know how I managed to say the exact words that were brought up just now. I really don't know.
Is there very little purpose to it, but I think it is patently unproductive. I think it's counterproductive right now for him to address Congress, particularly as we continue to try to nail down details on the ceasefire.
Would you consider some...
So the radical left, because we don't think a foreign leader should be addressing Congress. You mean Benjamin Miliakowski? That's his real name because he is actually from Poland. Young Bernie, thanks. That's the thing, too, about Israel, right? And you know what? I talked about, doing live fact checks. Percentage of Israelis who are natural citizens. How many non-Israelis live in Israel? So it looks like, what percentage of Israelis are immigrants? It looks like it's 26% of the population, with 19% arriving in the last 5 years, with 22% on average in other countries. So that's the QECD. It is not a majority like a lot of the things say, but the point in bringing this up is that a lot of Israeli leadership isn't from Israel, and a lot of people aren't from Israel. 26% is quite a lot in the grand scheme of things. And so the whole that he's actually from Poland is unsurprising, because Zionism did not originate from Palestine, the Jews that were in Palestine, or any of that. It was from the colonialists that were in Western Europe that had Jewish ties. They were the ones who created the Zionism, the ideology.
Sort of protest against his presence, his address to the Congress?
I mean, we'll have to see.
There's no doubt going to be protests
Tony
against
Ernst
that.
From Iowa, member of the Armed Services Committee, and if I may, also served as a company commander in Kuwait and Iraq, led 150 Iowa Army National Guardsmen during Operation Iraqi Freedom. And the senator retired as a lieutenant colonel in the Iowa Army National Guard after 23 years of military service. We honor and salute you today and always. Senator, thank you.
That's another thing that America loves to do, is highlight the military campaigns of their elected leaders, or to use that in their campaigns in general, which I don't have a problem with, because I served in the military. I was in the United States Air Force. I was enlisted. I was active duty, and I was a reservist. But as a reservist, I know that officers do not face danger when they are deployed and activated. I know it said that she led 150 people, but was she boots on the ground, shoulder to shoulder? I would be highly doubtful of that. That being said, I'm not going to disparage her military service, but I understand too that this is Fox News, and that by highlighting her military service and the fact that she's a senator and that she retired from the Guard, which is an easy feat to do because it's part-time military service, it is going to add a bit more credibility and weight to whatever it is she's about to say to the people who watch Fox News and who don't normally watch Fox News, because we hold military service to an extremely high esteem without having any understanding of what that military service is in context. You remember the dude from New York who settled a Palestinian home, who went viral when a Palestinian woman confronted him about stealing her home? He said, "If I didn't steal it, somebody else will." I don't remember that, but that's... Yeah. Oh, wait, no. No, I do remember that because, it was a couple from New York who went there on vacation, right? And they found that house, and that was actually part of the problem, right? Because Israel was just pushing people out of their homes earlier, prior to October 7th, and then confiscating those properties and letting foreigners come in who claim is Jewish or Israeli descent and let them live there. Yes, I do remember that. Apparently, if you acknowledge the reality that the vast majority of Israelis are recent settlers, you're anti-Semitic. Yeah. If you challenge Israel at all, you're anti-Semitic.
For being with me. Absolutely. Let's talk about the politics first. So Democrats don't want Benjamin Netanyahu to come. And it's been shaky ground with the current president about how much we really do support Israel at times. How important is it that he be allowed to speak to Congress?
Harris, thank you. It is incredibly important that the Prime Minister of Israel be allowed to come address a joint session of Congress. I think these far-left members of Congress have forgotten that on October 7th, we lost over 40 Americans in the attack by Hamas in Israel. We have 8 American souls that are still being held as hostages by Hamas in the Gaza Strip, 5 of whom we believe to still be alive. So it is incredibly important that Benjamin Netanyahu be allowed to come address a joint session of Congress to give us updates on the war in Israel and perhaps provide a little hope for our hostage families as well. I think it's incredibly important that we work together with our closest friend and ally and only democratic country in the Middle East.
What would you say to those members on the Hill, particularly those House members who are radical in their party?
And this is why it's just so difficult to watch Fox News or take anything that happens on this network seriously. You're using inflammatory rhetoric, these radical leftists. They're not radical by any stretch of the imagination. By at best, AOC is a centrist. At best, she is left of center, or she is center left, at best. And that is, she's considered the most far left in Congress. And then you got Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is, I would argue, left, but certainly not radical left. Radical left would be no state, extreme limitation of power, rule by unspoken context, or by temporary and powerless leaders. I don't even think Bernie Sanders has talked about rule by workers' councils, direct democracy, or middle-class intellectuals. Again, this is inflammatory, unnecessary, and by highlighting the emotional pull that there are American deaths and hostages, how is that at all relevant for the foreign prime minister to come to Congress? If anything, that should be grounds for the United States to go into Palestine, get our hostages, get out, and then tell Israel to calm the hell down. That's what that would actually support. But instead, what isn't being discussed is that this is enabling Israel to commit or to continue committing its atrocities. A democratic country, you mean apartheid country conducting a genocide, exactly. Speaking on the hostage thing, after October 7, during some one of the hostage agreements, Hamas released some hostages and released some prisoners, and many of the prisoners were children who were held without due process for months. It was ironic seeing how people were really realizing that Israel were holding children as prisoners. Yeah, and then immediately the pulse, what's the word? The public opinion went right back to supporting Israel because of this kind of rhetoric.
About not standing beside Israel at this point. I don't know,
honestly, we shouldn't be standing beside Israel. They are committing war crimes. And if America is the country, the land of the free, home of the brave, and America's or the world police, right? Then we should be looking at Israel and be like, you done effed up. We're gonna hold you accountable. They are not our ally in the Middle East. At this point, they are a detriment to our presence in the Middle East and have been for quite some time.
Many times, changing hearts and minds. It's sometimes a futile effort. But in this instance, these are the hearts and minds of people who've been elected. So what do you do?
Well, those hearts and minds obviously have been influenced by the far left, and I'm struck by the words of
your hearts and minds not by the far right,
when he states that Israel is the cause of this humanitarian crisis.
It is.
No, Senator Sanders.
It literally is. Historically speaking, Israel has always been the perpetrator. They are a colonizing force. They are an occupying force. They exist because Western powers carved out a piece of Palestine for Israel, and then Israel immediately attacked Palestine. Immediately.
Sanders, Hamas is the cause of this humanitarian crisis. They are the ones that instigated this war in Israel. Please, American people, let's not forget the cause of this. It is Hamas. It is a terrorist organization backed by one of our closest near-peer adversaries, Iran. So we need to step up. We need to do the right thing.
Are we going to throw in Pakistan and China next too?
Israel. Let's not forget the American souls that were lost in Israel on October 7th.
All right.
Okay, that's enough of that. That is definitely enough of that. Reality as Trump supporters see it. That should be fairly lighthearted.
Your internet provider is scam.
While former President Donald Trump has mainly generated headlines as a defendant of...
I want to ask you, where does the American public largely stand on the Palestinian conflict? You've been hearing it, unfortunately, that it's pretty much a 50-50 divide. There are some people, or half of the country is saying Israel can do no wrong and what they are doing is right, and that, they should get after the terrorists. And the other half is saying Israel's committing war crimes and crimes against humanity and genocide against Palestinians. It doesn't matter if Hamas is a terrorist organization or not. What is currently happening is atrocious. And that is the divide. Unfortunately, it isn't 80% are on the right side of history and 20% on the wrong side of history or some other extreme like that. It's 50-50.
Late. Mr. Trump's faithful supporters see him in a very different light. Senior contributor Ted Koppel takes a closer look at the election and what may come after.
I'm surprised this is on the Sunday morning show.
It's mid-April in an open field at the edge of Schnicksville, on the outskirts of Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Nice warm beanie hats. Schnicksville rally shirt.
Winter has not entirely surrendered. The faithful have been lining up since late morning, although Mr. Trump is not expected before early evening. On a day like today, it's cold.
It is.
It's wet.
Yep.
It's nasty.
Yep.
What the hell brings you out here?
The truth, freedom. We want our freedoms. That's what we're here for, freedom. No.
So, Nazi Germans didn't think they were evil. I guess the same thing is happening with Israel support. Exactly. America is now the good Germans, and Israel is Nazi Germany. Not to say that America hasn't committed its fair share of atrocities or supported atrocities. It's just that the American people are not holding our government accountable, largely because maybe we don't know how. Maybe it's because we are being too severely suppressed financially, right? Wage stagnation is not an accident, right? Increasing taxes on the working class is not an accident, right? Making it harder to vote, making it harder to find information on your elected officials is not an accident. Having expiration dates for voter registration is not an accident, right? Making healthcare tied to jobs and then making it impossible to maintain a job or hold your employer accountable with this passage of right to work where your employer can do whatever they want to you, right? These aren't accidents. These are systemic, deliberate actions over the course of time to keep people from being able to actively engage in their political processes. And it's what I'm trying to address through these streams and my channels. But, oh yeah, what I was going to say here, like, I want my freedoms and I want my safety and I want my country, right? This is no different than zealotry from any sort of religion, right? God is my savior. Jesus Christ will guide me in all things. The church is my salvation. Heaven is my salvation, right? I am not a sinner. I read the good book. You should read the good book or you're going to hell. Oh, you're not reading the book. You're going to hell. You're a sinner. I'll pray for you. There is zero difference between Christian zealotry and this. That is what this is. And I don't want to sit here and just make fun of Trump supporters. Lefties losing it. My uncle would turn in his grave hearing Trump. Yeah, well. I guess when you get into the political YouTube, it starts getting pretty spicy in the recommendations. Oh, yikes. The problem is that both main parties, the GOP and the Dem Party, support Israel. So most partisans support Israel. Those same people watch the mainstream media, which is very pro-Israel, whether it's Fox News, which is conservative, or CNN and MSNBC, which is liberal. All of the U.S. mainstream media is pro-Israel. And that goes back to the, if you control the media, you control information. If you control information, you can control the story and the narrative, and therefore you can guide a population however you want. And I believe that's exactly what Goebbels said. If you give me control of the media, I can turn any nation into a nation of pigs. That's the senility from the Fox News perspective. Why don't we do something a little bit light? Caitlin Clark. Why is that caps on? Chris Cuomo. He was the guy that moderated the CNN debate with me. I'd say he's a little biased, but
Clark, the WNBA star basketball player.
With that, it's actually kind of impressive. Half of the USA supports Palestine when they are being told to support Israel from every direction. Again, I think it's also a generational thing. Millennials and Gen Z outnumber Gen X and Boomers now by, I don't know if it's a substantial margin, but it's a growing margin. So young people support Palestine. Old people don't. Oh, you... right when I was saying that, you hit that. Nice. Why am I even here? You guys.
A white bitch. And you're going to be in apology mode real quick. But again, depends who you are. That's true if you're a white man. Pat McAfee, although obviously he couldn't have been having racist intentions towards Caitlin Clark. Why is it wrong for him to call her that? Now, we all get it. I'm a girl dad and I'm an adult man and I know how to behave. So, of course, you don't want to say insulting things. But who was he insulting? We know he wasn't referring to Caitlin Clark like she's that kind of person, like he was trying to put her down. Why is the reality being ignored here? Why are the people who are actually targeting Caitlin Clark getting a pass? What are we so afraid of? Why don't we want to talk about what's really happening? And I think I know the answer. And some people will say, no, don't do it, Chris. You're going to get in trouble. That has to end. We have to stop punishing people for voicing what they feel. And it's starting to evolve. And I think that this story is a great opportunity to talk about what.
So, unfortunately, AZV, if you are brown, and again, South America is brown, India is brown, and Americans don't have any sort of distinction between that. So if you wear a hijab or a turban or anything like that, the Middle Eastern clothes, whatever, Americans have been so brainwashed, honestly is the best word to put it, since 9/11 to fear brown people. So yes, it doesn't matter which country you're from, if it's democratic, if it's not, if it's Islamic, if it's not, if it's even in the Middle East or not. If you look a certain way, you will be feared outright.
What people are really afraid of in our society, which is the truth.
All right, Chris, let's get to it. Let's wrap it up.
I'm Chris Cuomo. Welcome to the Chris Cuomo Project. I'll give you another truth. Subscribe, whatever you call it, it's free. Now, you want to go down the road of long COVID with me, and more of you are realizing you have it. COVID's not going anywhere. That's the Substack. And it's just $5 a month. I mean, just go to your
promoting
seen
yourself.
It in every sport all the time. So we all saw the video. I'll tell you what I didn't like. What motivated Kennedy, the other player, to do that to Caitlin Clark? Was it just to get in her head? Was it just to throw her off her game? Or was it something else? I believe it may have been something else. You don't know what's in her head. Yeah, I know. But I saw how she reacted to it and how they don't want to take questions about Caitlin Clark. And there's a jealousy. And that's normal. That's normal. Jealousy is normal.
After what the Cuomos did during COVID, they should never mention COVID. Exactly. Never mind that. And he's parroting some extremely right-wing whistles, dog whistles, like the Truth. Truth Social is a social media program for alt-right, extreme conservative views. And he's saying truth in the same exact way that they say truth. He's talking about COVID. He's talking about that people can't handle this and that we needed to be talking about the reality and we shouldn't be afraid of X, Y, and Z. That's the exact same talking points that conservatives make, but he's making it from presumably a left-leaning field. Now, that's actually what I wanted to talk about, though, with Caitlin Clark, is that she got basically shoulder checked to the ground by another player, and not only did her team not do anything about it, but nobody seems to be doing anything about it. And Caitlin's like, I don't know why she did that. It's not okay. We should be talking about it, but I guess them's the ropes. And like, I know nothing about Caitlin Clark other than that she is a very talented female basketball player who was dominant in college and is holding her own in the professional leagues and with the WNBA. And it's like, she's a rookie. Okay, great. She's going to get razzed. I expect it. If you've ever done any sort of sport, if you've ever been the new guy in a competitive environment, you get razzed. That's what happens. Is it okay? Maybe, but it's what happens. But shoulder checking somebody to the ground and then just walking away from it, getting knocked down, pushed down, and it's not just Caitlin Clark. It's also Angel Reese. I really hope I got that right, because I get my names confused sometimes. But point being, the rookies are getting abused in the WNBA, but for the first time, the WNBA is extremely popular in America, outpacing the NBA, setting records just about every single time a game is played. And so, yeah, we do need to talk about this. And it's not okay to just bash females athletes because they're popular or they're talented and that you're insecure. That's not okay. If anything, we should be proud as a country that women's sports is getting this kind of recognition, that we have strong, powerful female athletes that are winning, that are champions, that are changing the game and the nation's perception. We should be celebrating Sha'Carri Richardson and, oh my goodness, well, Caitlin Clark, Simone Biles, Venus and Serena Williams, right? Like, we should be celebrating our female athletes, not trying to find a way to tear them down.
Okay? Especially when there's money and riz and status connected to someone's position that you can be jealous of. Jealousy is real and would make sense. I didn't like that her teammate and her other teammates were in no rush to help her. That speaks to something else. And I don't like that the WNBA is letting this happen. And
Exactly. Why was Caitlin called a B by Pat McAfee? Because Pat McAfee is... Wait, it's Pat McAfee? Is that the same Pat McAfee that did all of the... I forget which shows now, but is he that guy? Now I gotta know. Patrick Justin McAfee is an American sports analyst. Okay, so it's not the guy I'm thinking of. I don't know why. We could watch it, but I don't want to give platform to that kind of behavior. But still, I'm sure it's not just him. I bet there's a lot of conservatives losing their mind that a white female basketball player is dominating sports right now instead of whoever their favorite basketball player or sports ball player is in the men's leagues. That's all it amounts to. Anytime women succeed in America, these mouth breathers come in out of the woodwork to tear them down. And some of it's grift and some of it is actual malice. As we saw in the previous stream, when we were talking about the Mexican presidential election, the Hispanic or the Mexican notable, the person who knew about Mexican elections, literally took time out of their presence on that show to disparage against women and say that he did not believe women should control or have power. So that's what it is.
I'll take them one at a time. First, let's do the easiest one, okay? Because this is going to be very controversial, and people are going to try to get me in trouble about it, just like they did with Pat McAfee.
Which is the same
and it's going to be wrong.
No, this is literally the same.
And I'm not in the sports world. I don't cover.
Stop. This is the exact kind of stuff that conservatives say. They're gonna cancel me. The woke left is gonna cancel me. They're gonna shut me down. You're never gonna hear from me again because of what I'm about to say, and then just say the most belligerently racist or discriminatory things you can imagine. He's parroting the same style of rhetoric
for sports. So my employer is not going to come after me because you're looking at my employer right now. Okay. And this is my podcast and I'm going to say whatever the fuck I want to say. And this is all the truth. The WNBA has one star that most people know. And it's Caitlin Clark. And that's awesome because it's elevating the WNBA into an entire different echelon of recognition. Good for them. I dig it. Okay. I like to see the growth. I just like to see the growth of women's sports. I think it's good for our society. As a girl dad, as a sports enthusiast, I think it's good. As a fan, I think it's good. We know that you protect your star. You hit Michael Jordan like that. Not only were you going to have all of the Chicago Bulls beating your ass, not only were you going to have the ref throwing your ass out, but you are probably going to be fined. Why? You don't fuck with the money. That's why. You don't hit Tom Brady like that. You don't hit any good quarterback like that. They keep changing the rules to preserve the ability of the value to be on the field. You know it. I know it. It's not even close.
Which is a valid point. It is a valid point. I mean, let's be honest. If somebody tried to shoulder check LeBron James or Kyrie Irving, who's another... Mijalovic, he's another prominent one. Let's look at other sports. Not that I know too many other sports names. But I do know Michael Jordan. I grew up in the 90s. So you're right. If they did that to Shaq or Jordan or Kobe, there would have been all sorts of problems because these aggressive tactics do happen in men's sports, and guess what? They get punished. They get fined accordingly. So why isn't the WNBA doing it? And that's a very valid point. I'm not even saying from the sake that Caitlin Clark is the face of the WNBA right now, but it shouldn't happen to any player in the WNBA.
Remember the hack a Shaq defense? Who's going to hurt Shaq? Guy's a beast, okay? But they still had to start policing it. Why? Because you don't beat up on what brings in the money. It's a simple concept. It's always existed in sports. We all know it's real, and it probably should be as a value proposition. It's entertainment, right? This is a business. So, what the hell is the WNBA thinking?
I think that's a great place to end on it. I just realized we were at our 3-hour mark, and we're not talking about politics. We're talking about, pop culture. Is that would sports be a part of pop culture? I don't know. But I do think that there is some merit to discussing Caitlin Clark and the WNBA and how women's sports is treated in America and how people in general react to women's sports and how it also feeds a lot of anti-women rhetoric and discrimination besides. So I think it's valuable, but I think it was an easier way to end the stream. So I think if I was going to wrap up, so we are wrapping up, I'd like to thank everybody who watched. I'm sorry for the trolls that showed up. I'm sure that'll only get worse as this channel continues to grow, thanks to your support. But as I have said before, this channel isn't about being entertainment and exciting or off the walls. I'm trying to present current events, policy, civic engagement in a way that is digestible and fun, yeah, and interesting, right? Doesn't have to be entertaining. Doesn't have to be boring. I'm trying to make it digestible. I'm trying to make it interactive, and I'm trying to show that regular people can participate in the electoral process, that we can be informed about politics, and that we can look at the hard issues, address them civilly. And I'm hoping that over the next few weeks and months, as we continue to grow, and as more of you continue to watch and join us, that is proven to be true. So on that note, take care and see you tomorrow.